Greetings, fellow Empyreans. I am Ashrothi, and this is day 30 of the War for Reality. That's right, it has been 30 days since this conflict it began with Invasions Chapter 3, and having it been roughly 1 month, I thought it would be a great idea for us to come together and talk with both sides to sort out where we been and how this has played out. I hope that this discussion will allow us to kind of get a better feel for both sides of this experience, because one of the very fundamental pieces of this whole puzzle is the crisis nature of things and the fog of war that creates there. So there's a lot of misperceptions, there's a lot of isolation and think tanks and theories and speculation and propaganda and all kinds of things. And so, like I said, with a month under our belts, I think it's important for us to kind of come back through it and like take stock of what it has been like for all of us. So I've assembled a set of, I believe, 3 people from both sides, I want to say. I don't know. I've assembled a small group of people from both sides of the aisle, and we will go through the list in order based on where they appear on voice chat. So in, I guess, semi-alphabetical order. We're going to start with bracket ERB, end bracket Emmeline Farah. I believe they is the preferred nomenclature. They say so themselves. Anywho, thanks for that. Deebs, tell us about yourself. Guess what? Remember how I said I forget the thing and then eventually I don't forget the thing? I was predictive, so let's start over. Emma, let's start with you.
Okay, I can do that again. That's no problem. Hi, I'm Emmeline Farah, CEO of the C4 Wormhole Alliance Einstein Rosen Brigade. I'm also a senior FC with Spectre Fleet, and for the past month, I have been leading fleets to advance the cause of Zoria Triglav. Long may they wave.
I'm glad that makes sense to everybody now. Moving right along. Deebs, give me another shot at it.
Sure. So my name's Deeb Spar. I am FC and leadership with the Minmatar Role-Playing Alliance Electus Matari. We do a little bit of everything and have for a while: faction warfare, nullsec, wormholes, you name it. And we just came off a long war against the Hogs Collective, which you may have read about. And currently we are fighting the invasions by the Triglavians into Minmatar space.
Wait, so you're Amarian loyalists?
We're Minmatar loyalists.
Oh, okay, my bad. I misunderstood the beginning of your intro then. Interesting. Okay, I've got questions, but we'll move on. Dutch Gunner, how you doing? Who are you?
Dutch Gunner. I'm the senior FC and leadership of Artak Research Consortium, ARC. And yeah, we've been in the news a lot in the previous weeks, ramping up to Chapter 3, because ARC is into lore, trying to figure things out, how things operate. And we are currently trying to figure things out with Chapter 3. We got some potential working theories and different things. But yeah, we're on that side. In our case, it makes sense from the roleplay perspective of what Ark has done in the past to be on the side of Edencom. But we're a bit in between because yes, we fight in support of Edencom, but we still haven't given up on trying to establish communications with the Triglavians because diplomacy still has our preferential over actual combat.
Alrighty, and but it's also worth noting that your group was one of the major groups that ran invasions through Chapter 1 and 2 as well.
At least the ones that ran them on a fairly regular basis, yes.
Right. Hey, CCP Sledgehammer 07 up in chat. Good to see you. CCP Sledgehammer is one of the main developers for this feature. Moving right along, we have Major Irritation.
Hi, yeah, so I'm a fellow streamer. I've been running only Chapter 3 for the invasions on behalf of Edencom forces. I was there for the first system to flip to Fortress and stream the whole thing, and I've been streaming multiple sites and teaching new bros how to run Edencom sites.
I think that this this content has incredible potential for streamers. You know, I've been streaming invasions for this last year, and it's really cool to see. Did you just recently start streaming?
So Eve, yes. I'd previously streamed various first-person shooters. I actually did some EDL for PUBG. I was rated top 500 NA for a while for that. So this is very different content. But yeah, I've been playing Eve since 2004. So I thought it was time to stream some Eve content and yeah, teach some people how to run sites. Hopefully.
Very cool. Well, I have plenty of questions for you too, but at risk of being accused of trying to learn from the enemy, we'll just move on to Yavanis or Kaldari Isu.
Yeah, so yeah, my name's Yavanis. I'm in the Corp with Ashley and Malro. I've sort of been lurking there long enough to start gaining responsibilities, and I don't know, I was in Test for a while, I was in Galente Faction Warfare for a while, and now I'm with, joined up with the Kybernuts. I'm a baby FC. I'm mostly interested in burning things, to be completely honest.
Man, I gotta say, this is why I do a lot of introductions, because you guys are really good at underselling yourselves. But each one of these guys have either stood up really in a predominant way among the Kybernot or pro-Triglavian efforts, and or was thrown at me when I asked the Edencom guys to send forth tribute. So I do appreciate y'all coming, and I guess we'll start with the first question, which is like, what about this feature attracted you to this? Like, what caused you to want to be part of this feature? And we will start in, or like, if anybody has a strong answer to that, that's just something to start chewing on. What attracted you to the feature?
I think the obvious thing is just the fact that we actually have an opportunity to fundamentally alter the way that New Eden works. The fact that we can change a high-sex system to a null-sex system, which we didn't know. We just got in there and started shooting things. But then when it happened, it was so exciting. And then it just adds to this mystery of what's next.
Right, so you joined before the promise was shown.
Yeah.
So then you just, based on the hints of it being possible.
Right. I mean, it to me, you know, as a very amateur lore nerd in Eve, this was the first real commitment that I saw CCP making to implementing the lore in a feature-based way into the game. And I mean, I created Emma when Caroline Star happened. After 2 years with a character who is really sort of nullsec based. So I'm all in it. Bring on the lore, bring on the adventure, tell me what's happening. Let's explode some stars.
So you were on it like day one. You're like, I'm in it to win it.
Yeah.
Okay. Anybody else a day oneer?
Strictly speaking, I wasn't because we were busy pulling out of faction warfare. But we were planning on it from the beginning, and we were involved in Chapter 1 and 2 content, often along with ARC. For me personally, this is just another natural outgrowth of the play that I've been doing for years, where the Minmatar Republic is being invaded. We are going to defend it. Same as if the Amar were invading, or when they do, on a daily basis.
I guess I'm sort of in the same boat there. If the Caldari state is under attack, I'm going to help the attackers.
Awesome. Major, what about you? What was your experience about like your decision? Because as a streamer, obviously, you make decisions in a very complex level because you also need to have content that's good for your audience, or whether or not you stream it, what impact it is. Streaming Eve has its own complexity. So, what was your thought process? And were you a day oneer? Did you come later on? How did you go through that process?
Sure. So I had been looking at the new ships that had been announced for EdenCom and decided that I really wanted one, being a nullsec PvPer. I thought that'd be quite good fun. And I really liked the visuals from the intro video, so I'd really determined that I was definitely going to help EdenCom regardless, because at that time we didn't really know how they were going to be seeded. I then jumped in day one of Chapter 3, so as soon as the patch went live, I was online, and I played through a little bit of the content to get a hang of it. Took a look at Twitch and was like, there doesn't seem to be anyone streaming this from EdenCom point of view. It's all Triglavians. So fired up the stream, started streaming it, and sure enough, people started pouring in and seemed to like the alternate point of view. And essentially, I've carried that on. Probably about 5 days a week, I've been streaming the EdenCom content and pushing different sides. There's a little bit of shenanigans in nullsec, which has slowed things down this week, and possibly in the weeks to come, but I'm going to keep trying to rally the EdenCom sides. Like, for me, a lot of Eve now is helping new players, so a lot of my content is aimed at the new players who want to learn how they can get in on the ground level. So, for example, in my in-game channel, I have alpha fits for Logi pilots that new players can get into very quickly, and we've seen those fits run in the Dreadnought sites, for example, and survive even tanking the Dreadnought in one instance for one of our Ospreys. So we know they work, and we can get new guys in at some pretty decent content straight away.
That's very cool. So, yeah, one of the things that I always liked about Invasions during Chapter 1 and Chapter 2, which is basically the kind of the content that you're running now, sort of, but I really liked it as an opportunity where it's challenging enough that it tests your capabilities, and if somebody is silly about something, then they can very well be punished for it. But at the same time, it's not too difficult to, or you can make things happen, but people go through the repetition of doing things correctly. That's what I'm trying to say, is that it's an opportunity to run something for a long period of time that simply allows people to repeat doing the correct motions. And I think that one of the problems with learning to fly in Eve from a strictly PvP only perspective is that PvP engagements are often too short, too chaotic for an individual to learn much. And these environments allow the component pieces to be isolated, and lessons to be, need for lessons to be identified, and then those lessons given.
Well, that's a really interesting train of thought as well, because I've found that the way that these rats work is very much similar to small gang PvP. Well, I guess for some of you guys it would be medium gang PvP, but that's beside the point. It is definitely a nice entry level for teaching people the basics that they need to know for fleet combat.
I do want to say... Oh, sorry, go.
I agree completely. I really love it for teaching people this content. I loved Vanguard incursions for the same reason. 10 people learn how to use Logi, learn how to use broadcasts. Assaults were really actually where it came up because Vanguards are a little too easy. And I think this has done a really nice job of replacing that asterisk. I'm sure we'll get into what we view as problems later, and I think this has done a decent job of that, but there's ways it could do better.
Absolutely, and even the requirement to descan fleets down and stuff like that, it's a great thing to teach new players.
Yeah, it's exposure to a whole bunch of mechanics and concepts.
Absolutely.
All right, so let's just say, the lead up to Rarvas, from what I experienced, was first of all, a couple of systems went by, and I remember the Triglavians and Edencom were going kind of 1 for 1 at first. But what happened was that Edencom ones fortified, and Triglavian ones disappeared. To the point where I know that the Triglavians started to become disparaged, and I know that it was becoming popularly known at the time that or at least it was starting to, even the accusation was made that Triglavians could not take systems, that our side was bugged, and the Edencom side was working. And then, of course, famously, Rarvas was progressed into first liminality, and that really captured a lot of people's attention. Did anybody join after Rarvas, or is everybody here a pre-Rarvas person?
I was after Rarvas. I just wasn't playing Eve all that much at the time, and it took me a few weeks to get back in.
I think this is probably the best moment to reveal that while Rarvas hit Luminality, Ark and Associates were the ones responsible for blowing up the weather effect structure twice.
Well, all right then.
Thank you for the challenge.
It was fantastic. We had a plan, and it turned out to work so effectively that even when we heard afterwards that people had cloaked ships on grid to keep an eye on it, we were in, killed it, and out before even they realized what had happened. So some of the things happening in local, like, hey, what happened? Who's responsible? And the initial theory was that Edencom NPCs were responsible for blowing up the weather effect structure because that fleet landed shortly after we pulled it off the first time. It was fun to sit there and going like, well, we know who's responsible for it. We're just going to keep quiet for now. And I think that was a good time to just let that cat out of his bag and say, yep, Ark and Associates, we were the ones that pulled it off.
You took the blame it on the dog approach. Nice.
So it's worth noting that Ark has been like destroying those things in one way or another for several months now. So
no. Okay, if you're gonna go that way, the weather effect structure is something else as what we had in Chapter 2 with the stellar accelerators, and we left those alone for many months until at one point we decided, you know what, they're still here. They affect the sun, so it makes no sense from a roleplay perspective to leave them be. So we're going to do a big mop-up operation, and now we're going to definitely keep track and make sure that whenever an invasion is over, the stellar accelerator from the Triglavians that was giving the mining boost, and the penalty to warp speed, like those have to be gone when an invasion is over.
To be clear, I wasn't criticizing the decision. I was stating why you would be so effective at killing them on day one. Any rate, that aside, so does anybody have anything to comment about that period of time, that those early fortifications, the questions leading up to Rarvas's flip, that 2 or 3 day period of time?
There was an incident on patch day of the initial of Chapter 3, which was interesting. I think it was in Sarida, the first system to go to fortification, there were only ECs that spawned. So I spent, I think, about 18 hours grinding it into fortification using only ECs and attacking fleets. That was it. Obviously, subsequently, we've learned that it doesn't matter, that the bigger sites don't spawn for percentages. But at the time, it felt like a massive slog because there were bigger sites that the Proto-Glavians were running against us.
The grind was real, and I think that even though there were several words of caution, like, hey guys, don't get too excited, we're not going to see everything from the get-go. Plenty of people were still under the impression, like, hey, this is it, this is how it's going to be. But yeah, I think as much as with just stockpile feeding frenzy with everybody wanting to get in on the action.
Yeah.
So I think the first few systems were grinded within 24 hours. That's something that I'm pretty sure not even CCP in their most extreme scenario would have envisioned to happen, especially with how extremely grindy it was.
So does the Edencom side feel properly rewarded? Like, do they feel like there is sufficient reward for going through the readout phase? Because it sounds to me like you're not talking about how rich you got during the process or anything like that. Like, it's just a grind. So
I'm just going to take a couple of steps back and just stick with the observations that we've been able to make so far. And if other people want to chime in or make corrections or adjustments, feel free. What we've seen so far is that when you start in the start phase, and once one side gets the upper hand, what you'll see is that the other side, so the side that is being pushed out, has access to the next tier of sites. So obviously, since I'm in support of Edencom, I can only talk about the Triglavian site equivalent. So if Edencom is being pushed out, so it hits first luminality, you'll see emerging conduits and minor conduits, while the Triglavian supporters will still only have the emerging conduits equivalents of the Edencom sites. At the other hand, if the Edencom side is pushing it in towards Redoubt, then you'll see that Edencom still has only access to the emerging conduits, while the Triglavian side is able to kill, or at least combat, the Edencom equivalents of emerging conduits and minor conduits. So we'll see that there is a state, and we believe that there also is a timer in place where if an invasion is still not pushed one way or the other after a certain amount of time, bigger sites are going to be available. Having said that, once a system is pushed into Redoubt, it starts to escalate so quickly that by the time, if you're not in the air and the exact right time, it's very likely that you'll only have been able to run emerging conduits, hunt roaming fleets, or if you're lucky, you got to run the occasional minor conduit. So it definitely could use some balancing, because the time for the bigger sites, such as the major conduits or the observatory flashpoints, those are available for such a limited amount of time that I personally have not been in a position to run anything bigger than a minor conduit, because by the time it would hit Redoubt, and I would be able to run a fleet because of time zone differences, it would already be fortified and the sites wouldn't be there. So it needs some tweaking.
Let me ask you a question from your guys' side. I mean, what is your strategy for dealing with roaming gangs and all the other ways that you can advance the cause on your side?
Oh, sorry. Yeah, go ahead.
No, you go ahead. You
yeah,
start.
he got the last one. You get this one. Go.
Well, I was actually going to say, I don't know that experience is entirely accurate from when it comes to what we witnessed, at least yesterday when I was running some of the Edencom systems, particularly in Odixie. We had miners in Redoubt.
Yeah, there might have been some spawning issues in the early days.
Yeah, I think a lot of the bugs have at least been ironed out a little. I know we had to have a little bit of a fix halfway through yesterday, but
Yeah.
I know that CCP Sledgehammer has said that they are not currently balanced, and that is something they are looking at.
Yep.
Okay.
So just for clarity, because I know there's a lot of words and a lot of confusion, and some people only know half the words, and some people know none of the words. So just to explain this whole concept from kind of an abstract concept, there is Edencom and Triglavians, right? If Triglavians win, the system becomes nullsec. If Edencom wins, the system can no longer become invaded. A system is put into play. Every system that's put into play is put into play in Stage 1. Stage 1 produces Tier 0, or the bottom tier, sites for both sides, along with scouting roaming packs for those sides. When either side makes it halfway to their side, so either 75% or 25%, depending, because it starts at 50% and works towards either 100% or 0%, depending on whether or not it's Triglavian, basically. So when the Triglavians, when one side makes it to halfway towards their edge, then Tier 1 sites begin spawning for the opponent side. If this seesaws back and forth, this can make it such that Tier 0 sites can spawn, or Tier 1 sites can spawn for both sides. I've seen it happen. Now, when one side or another wins, if that system is available for progression for that side, the system will then progress into Stage 2. If it enters into Stage 2, then the clock is reset back to 50%. And we start again, but this time now both sides get Tier 0 and Tier 1 sites, and the roaming packs get nastier. When it
doesn't progress to Stage 2, you get a minor victory for one side or the other.
Correct. You'll either get a Triglavian or an Edencom minor victory. So then, in Stage 2, once you get halfway to the edge of Stage 2 again, it moves from Stage 2 Part 1 to Stage 2 Part 2, which is actually a named difference. So on the Triglavian side, it goes from first liminality to second liminality. In the case of Edencom, it goes from Redoubt to Bulwark, which is mostly it's not a new phase, but what it does indicate is that it is moving into the next step of site spawning. So at this point, we now get the Tier 2 sites for both sides. So now Tier 0, Tier 1, and Tier 2 sites spawn for both sides. I forgot that as soon as it progresses 10% before the end of Phase 1, the Stellar Construction Yard begins to spawn for the winning team. And then that can assemble their weather device, whether it be the Owning Empire for Edencom or the Triglavians' Das Liminality Locus for the Trig. And then once it progresses into Stage 2, if it does progress, you immediately also get Observatory Flashpoints, which are the Dread site that can be ticked to one side or another. Which is, by the way, one of the curious things about all of this, which is that the flashpoints used to be like the top tier thing, but now they actually start spawning before Tier 2 sites do. So Tier 2 sites, the old major conduits, don't spawn that much anymore. There isn't that much of a time window. And as you mentioned, it seems like Edencom grinds through their Stage 2 very quickly. But at the same time, we earlier heard somebody say that they felt it was just a total grind, which that sounds like feedback that it's too long. So now we're so far in this discussion, 10 minutes in, and we've now said it's too much of a grind and it's too short.
It's so based on chapters 1 and 2, there was a certain availability. And now there is a lot of time that needs to be spent. Like, people could spend 12, 14 hours, and all they saw were the Tier 0 sites or the Tier 1 sites, like the emerging conduits or the Edencom site equivalent. And then that was all they saw. They got it in, there was another time zone, they could and by the time they would run the next day, it would be gone, because it hit Redoubt and then it hit Bulwark, and once it's Bulwark, it's really over in a flash. compared to how much effort you have to put in when the invasion is just in the first phase where it could go either way.
Yeah, I'd say that the grind is in the first stage. The second stage, you really don't see the grind unless there happens to be conflict there because one side or the other tries to contest it in the second stage, which has happened a couple of times. But otherwise, like, the grind is all in the first stage, and it is really grindy because the experience gains are low. The point gains are low for either side. And CCP Sledgehammer's in the chat, he can correct me here, but from what I understood, it's because the point totals required are the same in both stages, but the amounts that you gain are different. Because there's more sites as you go later and there's more roaming fleets. So you're getting more point totals in the later stages, but you still need the same number of total points.
And I think it's also a little bit tricky because the perception, you're talking to a bunch of FCs right now. So our perception around grind, I think, is very tied to the fact that we're trying to get a group of 10, 15, 20, 30 people to go for hours to advance the cause. And so we're well aware of the time and the effort, and we have to, take a break and get new people in and make sure that people aren't being exploded by either side because their standings aren't right, and making sure people get on comms. And it's a lot to ask about people. I would be curious to know if, just ordinary people who come out and join all of our fleets, if they have that sense of the grind. But I know as FCs, we certainly all do. So again, a little bit of bias in there.
I think
From talking with people on the Eden Com side, at least, I'd say plenty of them see that grind.
Yep. Anybody that has been in the few fleets that I took out, they all recognize the grind for what it is. Interestingly enough, and this is something that might be disheartening to some people, is we quickly identified that going after the roaming fleets was having a bigger effect compared to running the sites. So there's a bit of a distinction where people just like, okay, so in order to push it one way or the other, we have to go after the roaming fleets, and we have to hit them so fast, so hard, because everybody is so dedicated to it. We don't really have time to salvage, and there's no bounty, so we have to do the grind, and there is no real reward other than saying, yeah, we're just doing it for the cause. But if you have to do that for hours and hours and hours and hours, people are going to lose interest.
So for a perspective on that, I had
Caldari, did you have something you wanted to say?
I was just going to mention that, chime in. Yeah, just once. I noticed, I think a lot of the grind in the first stage is also player made, because there's a lot more times where we're both in a system contesting it if it's not either acting like low-sec or having really nasty Eden Com rats. Because if I'm not mistaken, the rats are meaner and stronger in the second stage, right?
Yes. That's true to some extent, but I've pushed systems where the trigs were not contesting, and I can assure you it is grindy. I'd also say, how I know none of you have done faction warfare? You think this is grindy.
I never said I think it's grindy.
Yeah,
I said,
Yvanis and I come from faction warfare
that I'm addressing, but yeah, no, I'll be out here all day, no problem.
No, my problem, I'm not saying that it is or isn't grindy. What I'm saying is that what we've received is feedback that it is too grindy, but also too short, which as a game designer, that is a problem. So I just wanted to discuss those two forces in opposition of each other.
Obviously, there's some expectation that it should take a decent amount of time, and yes, you're absolutely right that having opposing forces fighting a system definitely slows things down. So is a lot of the grind player made, and is a lot of the speed perceived to be that when one player group massively outnumbers another in the system pushes very quickly compared to when there are two sides actually combating each other.
It seems to me like it takes about 10 or 12 hours to go from the middle of the bar to the end of the bar in stage one without a contest, or a lot longer maybe with contest.
Right. So there's kind of two things that I wanted to talk about here, but I'll try to start with the first one and see if I can remember them both. But either way, in that regards, so the issue here isn't just that Stage 2 has the same amount of points as Stage 1, but has more opportunity for points. The issue is actually that it isn't that you need to get that many points, it's that you need to get that many points more than the enemy team. And the stellar reconnaissance phases are the phases, as was pointed out earlier, that is the most contested. So just like resistances stack at high percentages to cause magnified results, if the sides are in close contention with each other, then the same number of points can seem monumental. Now, there is a question about whether or not that's a good thing or a bad thing, because that encourages players to then develop emergent gameplay, etc., etc. So it's not necessarily a bad thing, but it is worth noting that this isn't just a matter of the quantity of points. It's the fact that the points are effectively a push-pull. So you have to get that many more points than the opponent has accumulated over that same period of time.
Mm-hmm.
So
I think that is important, but you can look at the points where readouts have gone into effect, and even when, I can't remember the name of it, it was a Galente system, I think, while we were fighting over one of the Caldari ones. So there was only a small fleet of pro Edencom in this Galente system that was in readout, and they still managed to flip it so fast that as a US time zone player, I never saw a flashpoint spawn there.
right. So
Like it goes so quickly, but it goes slower when there's no one contesting at the lower level. Like it absolutely does.
yeah.
Stage 1 massively slower than Stage 2.
Yeah, so I was in that system, and to give you some perspective, because obviously everyone runs everything differently, in my fleets we're not stopping to loot, which potentially could be what's slowing down the Triglavian side.
Nope, we basically
No, we're
don't.
not.
Like,
No.
yep, we just let scavengers come in most of the time, to be honest.
Mhm.
Yeah, it's all scavengers. If you
so-
want to loot, stick a salvager in your high slot.
Okay, here's what I think is the real. I'm going to drill what Dutch Gunner was talking about from a slightly different direction because of my perspective. But what I would say is that it's not necessarily that any one phase is too short or anything like that. It's just that the availability of the higher end content is far more inconsistent than before. So the content that demands organization is unpredictable, which resists an organization actually enacting with it. And to combine that fact, so what's interesting is that the phenomena that I didn't expect is that we now zerg this stuff so hard that the dread site has become easy because we zerg it. They kill it before it even sieges. Like, you break it, right? This is like 40 manning a 20 man raid or something like that, right? Like, you break it before the mechanics go off. And that is why we can do that, but we don't do the tier 2 sites because tier 2 sites are really, really mean and would require like a well-constructed force. But A, well constructed force in LowSec is insanity, and B, Edencom bulwark phase is so short that the amount of organizational effort that it takes to have a fleet like that is incapable of actually executing on it in a productive way. And even if they did, it would just push it over unless it was like a Kybernaut guy coming in. Like, if some weird, crazy Kybernaut FC decided to start putting together field-based fleets to slow down. At any rate, so I think that the issue here is that the availability of organized content is not consistent with the amount of organization that is required to do that content. And that gets compounded against the idea of it being grindy or how long any given invasion lasts.
I think
I
that's
know
very
that
accurate.
there are some people who were fortunate enough to be in the right time zone, at least not the right time zone, the right time slot, and they've been able to farm observatory flashpoints or the income observatory flashpoints over and over and over and over.
Yeah, flashpoints are easy now.
it's like, holy crap, how are people that fortunate? And then I'm looking like I haven't even gotten to experience a major conduit or an observatory flashpoint because it's just not happening in the time slots that I have available. And
That's
it's tricky because
yeah. That is rough. I mean, I've done 12 dreadnought sites and countless mages. I will agree that the mages are significantly harder than the dreadnought sites, but obviously we have the advantage of it still being high sec where we are.
Well, I mean, we could do it in the high sec sites too.
If we're talking about, I think there is one thing that all sites can agree upon is the effectiveness of the different empires versus the Triglavians is completely out of whack.
Yes.
Oh my god, the Amar. Oh my god.
The Amar are super effective. The Kaldari, it's like they're not even.
You can sneeze on the Kaldari and they go away.
As it turns out, neuting and tracking disruption is really strong against Triglavians. Who would have figured that one out?
And ECM is not particularly good as a defense against anything.
No, not with how ECM works right now. Not with how ECM works right now, because if you get jammed, you can still shoot the one that's jamming you.
No,
well, they don't, though.
It's an AI problem. All the AI put ECM on a single target, which is also the target they're killing. They don't spread it out.
Yeah, I've been saying this since like month 1 of Invasion Chapter 1. Either way,
yeah, that's the same with Chapter 2. That was the same in Chapter 2, where we as ARC said, like, we don't even bother with Kaldari invasion because it's being blitzed by frigates. There's no beating that.
I mean,
when it comes to flashpoints.
I gotta say, Sig Hack is fun as heck, though, man. Like, that's some good times right there.
Yeah, at the same time, and this is something that makes my Minmatar heart really happy. People just said, like, wait, support Triglavians in Minmatar? Oh, hell no. Because the webbing and the target painting, and yeah, good luck if you're primared by the Dread, it's gonna wreck you.
Yeah, we got a Dread spawn at about 130 kilometers, the first one we did in Minmatar space, and lost a lot of our fleet.
Yeah.
Oh.
But yeah, I think we can all agree that the Empire's NPCs definitely need some tweaking because it's getting seriously out of whack.
Yeah.
So,
Ashtrashi, you mentioned earlier, is there a reward for Fortress? And I think no. Right now, the only reward for Fortress is the sake of putting it to Fortress.
Okay.
Because we're not getting the chance to make money off of majors and flashpoints, not consistently. Yeah, you might get to Zerg a flashpoint, but how much money does that make you? At best, you're going to take anything you make out of that and put it into like an SRP fund. So individual pilots certainly aren't making money off of that. Majors, same thing. Like right now, outside of specific people who manage to find the rare times when sites aren't getting zerged or operate in like late AU, RU time zone or something when there's not the zerging, I don't think many people are getting rich off this or you're a salvager who doesn't actually contribute to either side and you just slurp up as many wrecks as possible.
So, I mean, as is pointed out in chat, like minor victories are money-making machines for the enemy team, and Edencom minor victories in high sec are very rare compared to Triglavian minor victories. So, like, is that not sufficient? I understand. Like, the question was in the process of fortification, but now just more broadly, do you feel like you can within the same groove, like I am an Edencom dude, so I fight for these fortifications when I need to, and when I need to make money, I can go to a Triglavian minor victory and smash Trig there and make money. Like, is that a vibe that is going around, or has something?
No.
Is there a reason why that is?
Because if you do that, then you're giving up the next fortress system.
Mm-hmm.
Right. That's how it feels. Is okay, I could abandon the fight and go make money for myself like the selfish person I am. But if you're fighting for the fortresses in the first place, you're probably not going to do that. Certainly some people do, I'm sure. But the vast majority of the people who show up day after day, week after week, are not going to be doing that because they're not going to be doing that. I realize I'm not making a really strong argument here, but it's like people who choose to do do the fortress sites are, by virtue of being the people who choose to do the fortress sites, not going to do those miners.
And there is a strong feel of urgency where people's like, I need to put in the max effort, because the only thing that can happen is high sec can be flipped to null sec. There is no way to boost low sec to high sec. So things can only get worse. So I have to put in maximum effort to avoid, for people who say like, hey, I enjoy high sec, I enjoy staying in high sec, I accept that I don't have access to the same bigger risk, bigger reward content, such as low sec, null sec, wormhole space, but I don't necessarily care about PvP because it's not something I particularly enjoy. I much rather do different things, and they feel that they have to put in maximum effort to avoid things getting worse for them and their abilities to enjoy the game, and there is no counter movement for them. So you have to put in maximum effort just to keep things the same. And with how things currently go, there is no real way to make money on a different way, because then you're going to lose different systems.
And effort is the key word there. Like, I mean, I possibly could make as much money running the minor victories if I organized a fleet and I ran it as an FC, but I don't want to FC 7 days a week for 8 hours a day. I'd much rather go and make money, joining a already pre-made incursion fleet and go and kill some Sancho if I'm going to make money in high sec. It's much quicker and much easier and way less effort.
I just solo the sites.
Not to mention that there is a massive experience difference, because there is a strong representation of the low sec, wormhole, and null sec on support of the Triglavian side, so they are familiar with being in a fleet, following broadcasts, following targets calling, and then there's the people that tend to be more on the income side who are just not that experienced, and there is a serious amount of cat herding. And
brother,
I
you're
want
not alone.
trying.
You're not alone.
You need to watch Emma's stream.
No.
Yeah.
Sorry, go finish.
But like I said, that also has a massive difference in how people experience, because if you're trying to learn the ropes and you're like, yeah, no, okay, so now I get this, and then you have to take it up like, oh, congratulations, you just finished high school, here's a BB gun, now you have to take it up against the professional soldiers and the commandos. Go.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's something that several of the Triglavian FCs have talked about amongst ourselves, which is that so many of us are coming from either NPSI FC backgrounds or nullsec, or we have a lot of people with a lot of experience leading small gang, large gang, huge fights, whatever. And so we're coming to the table with a certain level of expectation around, okay, you're going to X up, you're going to get into fleet, you're going to get your stuff together, you're going to be ready to go. And that's not the case. Because somebody weeks ago mentioned that in one of the early Gallente invasion systems that he had stumbled across a bunch of people who lived in that system, and they were utterly clueless as to what was happening. And so he was trying to sort of like bring them on board and bring them to the triangle side and sort of whip them into shape. But I mean, it's such a huge opportunity and a huge responsibility, and oftentimes hugely frustrating to have to work with people who have never done anything with a fleet before, ever. They don't understand how to broadcast. They don't understand why they need to be on comms. They don't understand how to follow instruction. And that's part of it. That's part of the grind that I was referring to, is that it's not just, spending the time. It's all of the herding of the cats and getting people on the same page to work together as a smooth unit, because neither side can advance unless you've got multiple smooth units working together.
Absolutely. I mean, I think I spent 45 minutes teaching people what a cap chain is and a MAR wants.
Yeah.
I agree with this.
Faction warfare.
But, I agree with this, but I would say that like my thoughts about this would just be ask how much of this is because of an absence of tools or answers, or how much of this is because of an absence of us using those tools correctly. For instance, it just occurred to me as we were talking right now that some of the problems that we run into could be solved with the pointer tool. I haven't used it as much as I probably should, so it makes me think that maybe other people haven't too. Frequently, like the problems of failure to understand how to do the right thing can definitely be on both sides at this point, which is an important thing to keep in mind.
Well, this is why streaming into Discord is every day I praise its existence, because I'm just like, all right, guys, I'm going to teach you how to broadcast. I'm streaming into Discord. Click that red button to the right of my name. Come watch. Because I think that's more valuable than this pointer tool.
That's true, and also getting them to be like, within like 2 minutes of trying to diagnose debugging somebody's problem, it's like, go live. Just show me what you're talking about.
Exactly.
So,
Ash,
go ahead.
Ash, did you see my DM?
Hold on. Nope.
Okay.
This is a different thing right now.
Okay, I just didn't know how someone joined your group.
All right.
Oh, like-
Who was talking? Oh, Caldari?
I was just gonna say I'm glad to hear that we're both experiencing a little bit of cat herding frustration and all that sort of thing. That was all I was gonna say. But I've been spamming the pointer tool. I've been going live a little bit, and to some extent, it is still just frustrating because the people that aren't listening are the people who aren't listening, and then they don't notice that you're trying to explain things to them. But it's fun. It's a good challenge, and I'm glad we're both working on that. I've been really impressed with both sides and their commitment to teaching players how to do things like this.
Yeah.
So let's go.
I was just gonna say this is not a new problem. Anybody who has run open militia fleets for any militia ever, or recruited new players into militia fleets, will have experienced this. It's to a large degree. There's a large number of people who just won't listen, no matter what you do. You could be pushing a system in faction warfare, and you're at 90%. And the enemy's fighting you back, and you go, guys, we just need you to come over here to finish flipping the system like we've been trying to do for 4 months. And there will be 20 people in your fleet of 80 who are on the other side of the war zone or in HiSec. And why? Who knows?
Yeah, I think I can summarize this entire section with both sides are having to herd cats, and it's crazy. However, in general, the Kybernauts have just, by the nature of the conflict, absorbed more cat herders.
I think that's true. I also think that we can generally state that the Kybernauts have a few more organized groups who are willing to push low-sec systems, whereas Edencom has a handful of groups that will do it, but certainly not as many and not as easily. My group is perfectly happy going into low-sec. We live there most of the time anyways, so we have no problem doing it. By the way, that was a nice Drekovic that we killed of yours the other day in Vale. But trying to do an open fleet like that is like pulling teeth, whereas I've seen that the Trig side has much less difficulty convincing a group of people to go into low-sec because half of them live there anyways.
Yeah, we don't struggle too much, I don't think, with getting people into low-sec, or like you were talking about earlier with the roaming fleets. A lot of our guys would prefer to be on the roaming fleet team in any system because it's more warping, more fun.
I want to drill into the low-sec stuff in a little bit, because I think that the low-sec sites really happened a little bit later in the progression. Immediately after Rorvos converted, I would like to think that that was like the period of the most energy. And I think that what is it, a week or two that like went from Rarvos to the two systems being taken by the Kybernauts at the same time. That span of time feels like the biggest impulse of energy and excitement and people pouring into it and all that kind of stuff so far. What was your guys' experience of that time in particular between Rarvos and including Vale and to the two stars being one in the same weekend?
From my perspective, as somebody who wasn't particularly inclined to defend the Amarian system anyways, sucks for them. Rarvos was an interesting thing for me because from my perspective, it was simply a bunch of people who I all wanted to see explode fighting each other. And I didn't particularly care who won as long as they kept shooting each other. So that was, for me at least, an opportunity to push as many other systems as we possibly could while everybody was infighting over Rarivas. Frankly, I was disappointed that the same thing didn't happen in Vale. I expected to see 100-man Maelstrom feats round 2 Electric Boogaloo in Vale, and it just didn't happen. So for me, the time where everybody was fighting in Rarivas was actually a fairly pleasant push and time to refine tactics and push every other system that we possibly could. We actually got a lot of good work done then.
That's true. Rarivas was a very complicated. Maybe we should drill in a little bit about that. So in Rarivas, the conflict over Rarivas' liminality really drove home to me the fact that the entire game is basically set up to put the player towards Edencom. The UI, what rats attack, the way that the sites are described, the way that the language used everywhere, it's all designed as default to put the person in Edencom. That being said, I also more broadly believe that, as you mentioned, like fortifying a system is maintaining the status quo. A final liminality is a big freaking deal. And so, like, by that very nature, you have to expect that there's going to be significantly more fortification than liminalities. Just like, if you just like sit back and think about it for a few seconds, it has to be that way. Like, these are designed to be very special systems. Not half of HiSec is now suddenly a final liminality. But either way, the fight itself over the final liminality, the fact that nullsec people would come in and there's this weird dichotomy, like whether or not they were fighting each other versus fighting Edencom versus Triglavians. And during that time, I put out message after message after message because what was important to me was that if people are fighting, that's fine. That's like the Triglavian way. But at least set your overview correctly and get your standings corrected, so that way you're pushing the side that you even want to push. Like, if you want to side with Edencom, that's fine. But like, we had people that legitimately would have sided with the Triglavians, but did not understand how, and ended up accidentally helping the Edencom. But at the same time, I think it makes perfect sense that our UI is designed that way. That the choice to become the Kybernaut needs to be the choice. The default is that you're a law-abiding citizen that wants to do the right thing and that trigger bad.
So with that, it is just worth pointing out that the reputation gains compared between the two sides, it may even be representative to the fact that CCP was aware that may be the case and made it much easier for you to fix your reputation with Triglavians than with Edencom.
I've heard about this. So my understanding is you guys don't get the big reputation bursts for doing the dread sites?
I have 0.03 reputation with Edencom.
What?
So you guys can't get to the +3 standing state.
That's extremely hard. Like I've been busy so long, and I'm still at -002. Like I haven't even hit the -1 point. Like I haven't even hit -1.0 or +1.0. That's next to impossible right now.
Yeah, that feels super wrong.
The highest Edencom reputation I've found among people who run the sites is 0.04.
Right.
Yeah.
The biggest change I've been able to get was a -0002, and that was for hitting the Nexus mining structures and the weather effects beacon. I've never gotten anything bigger than that.
I mean, on the Triglavian,
and I've run dreads.
On the Triglavian side, when you hit 3.0, the Triglavians turn blue to you. I've got 1.78.
Yeah, we don't get rep gains. Period. Like
it's all derived.
Majors run more than me, but I've run, I don't know, 40, 50 hours plus of sites, and I'm at, I think, 0.002 still.
Has anybody submitted this as a bug report?
Yes, it is acknowledged, and they're supposed to be looking into it along with a number of other things.
Okay.
I was gonna say, it sounds as though Edencom is not giving you guys the love that you deserve. Come on over to Doria Triglov.
You know-
We'll give you all kinds of love.
Solid point there, Emma. This seems just like Edencom to expect all of this work out of you, and yet not give you nearly what you deserve. The recognition that. Okay, I'll stop.
Well, so
The defense
the
of the
flip side-
Minmatar Republic is sufficient.
No, actually, that is an important question that I have, because we were talking about rewards and all that stuff. Especially in this during and post Raravos era, how much patriotism has there been among Edencom members? This idea of like, this is our high sec, you know, like, because I hear this fortification does nothing, but like, you're securing your homestead, right? Like, you are. From now on, that system won't be liminal because you saved it. You hero you.
Yeah, I checked today. I checked today.
The R too. There's some conspiracy theories about that, but so there's some dispute over whether we should be saving it. Currently, we're going under the theory that Triglavians are invading, ergo we are defending against it until shown otherwise. But I'm giving some information that there are quite a number of Trig miners in Losec. Actually, the majority of them are in Losec, so there aren't actually that many for Edencom forces to go far, even if we wanted to.
Here, let me go pull it up real quick.
So
That's a
I
good,
will
solid
speak
point.
to certainly the gracious hosts that we've had in systems we've gone to save, who have gone out of their way, at least the active capsuleers have gone out of their way to turn their open harbors into Edencom only harbors, for example, and to change some of their settings, and in some instances even to ship in resupplies for us from nearby trade hubs for ammunition and the likes.
Also, I'd like to go back to a point that you brought up earlier about how Edencom is the default, and I don't know that I agree with that. Certainly, Eve, like you're defending your home and all that, but I would argue Eve is predicated on destroying sandcastles as much or more than it is predicated on building them. The idea of being able to go in and take from somebody else what you want is a huge draw to the game.
You're spot on.
I don't know that I agree that the language encourages you to go Edencom. Trigs are here for change. They're here to make something different. It's very inviting language for anyone who goes that way.
Right. Let me clarify. So first of all, if you're talking about the themes of EVE Online and whether or not this is true, then absolutely. But I would also argue that the theme in that is rejection of Haven constraints. And so to that effect, as I said, like the choice to become a Kybernaut is a choice. You have to literally change your UI and everything in order to make it so that it works right. But what I mean by the default is I mean literally the UI presented to the user. They see the Triglavians as hostile. The Triglavians fire at them. They do not see the Edencom guys even on their UI at all. And when they do, they appear friendly. And all of the language in the agency and in the show infos are all from Concord. So it's all very controlled language. But again, this is perfect for the themes of EVE Online. Both sides, the rebels and the do-gooders.
I'd like to chime in a little bit on that, and that's more with how things have happened in the past, because when the Triglavians were first introduced, they too were not showing up on the UI. A lot of the new content with things, they don't automatically show up on your UI, regardless if they're friendly or unfriendly.
Correct. Actually, more broadly, I'll just say the UI is saved locally, and so anytime CCP adds any new entities into the UI, you will have to go and manually add it onto your overviews, because your overview defaults to having it be off. And so, but what I'm saying is that a brand new person with a default overview that is now. And again, so like I know this is true because this is literally what happened to a couple of the FCs. because they go in and they didn't know what to shoot at, and so they would just kind of wander around and shoot at players, and when the rats attacked them, they attacked the rats. But if that is your philosophy, then what you're going to do is just kill a whole bunch of trig rats.
Yeah, I'll agree to that insofar as it goes. But anybody who's making that choice, or I would say the majority of people who are going to make a choice. So if we take out the people who just sort of do whatever the default is presented to them, anybody who's actively making a choice or has the capability to act, that's the wrong word. That really implies.
Yeah,
No,
I'm just
I like it. Stick with it.
Having to figure this out was part of what made Rarivos take so much longer than every other event, is what I'm trying to say.
But like people who are inclined to make a choice at all, I would argue, tend to make the choice of going for trigs.
Right, but what I'm saying is that people who go into the liminality systems, even if they want to support the trigs, if they are just some nullsecker that are coming in to shoot at people, they by default, if they don't think it through, which some of them don't think of it, because like they actively resist processing the PvE side of things because it's beneath them. So they don't go through the effort of going through that, and so by default they were shooting at the stuff that would progress the team that was against what they were after. So my main effort was like when everybody was complaining about how long it took, I was literally just spamming over and over again the process of how to fix your overview. It's like, I don't care if you guys all shoot at each other, just also shoot at the correct rats.
Yeah,
I get what you're saying, and that the UI pushes you that way, but
yeah.
I'd again argue people making an active choice are going to choose trigs.
Yeah.
People who do make an active choice will most likely choose trigs, even if it takes them a little bit to get there.
Well, I mean, we've seen people make the active choice in both directions, but either way, I think that we have made some good points here. I'm not trying to say that it's wrong, and I think that it's the way it's designed is kind of correct. If anything, I think that what would fix this problem is better like global affiliation. So, I should be able to see if somebody is pro Edencom or pro Trig. I should be able to identify a Kybernaut that's outside of my own corporation, much like a militia or whatever. And yeah, and like so, if ticking over in my standings meant that I got an extra badge on my screen, so that way I knew when the Triglavians said that I was fucking glorified, then I think that would probably be way helpful.
And
used to be able to tell.
I'm just going to call it emerging gameplay, was that as soon as the system started to flip, like especially with Rarivos, you saw a lot of people who don't really care about Triglavians show up because they had an ideal stomping ground. Like they didn't really care about the content, but they did care about being able to shoot anything that moves without having to worry about, for example, capital escalations or supers or titans. So that definitely didn't help that there were people that jumped into Rarivos and just shot anything that moved and wasn't in fleet. Like that definitely did not help the content in particular, but that's not something that I would designate as a design flaw, but that's just emergent player behavior that
it's fog of war, man. We don't know what's going on. We're shooting at the wrong fucking dudes, man.
Well,
I love it. Actually, I love it.
Going out there deliberately, like if it's not in the fleet, shoot it. Especially if it's player, we don't care which side, shoot them.
If it is in the fleet, if they look funny, shoot it still. This is like, I have frequently said that this really feels like faction warfare with a lot of the biggest issues of faction warfare solved, and one of those issues is the standing changes. So on the one hand, I do want to be able to like have little tokens to be able to identify what somebody has, where somebody's at when it comes to their standings, just for value. I also want people to be able to fake that shit, or like to tink with it, or to spy or whatever they need to do, like emergent gameplay, cool. But like the fact, just having a thing that lets us know which side you've declared for would be super handy.
It is a little. It is a little bit weird, though, when you think about it, that we're only, on the Triglavian side, we're only losing standings with Edencom. Like, it doesn't punish us at all, really. But, we just turned over some Empire systems to the Triglavians. Shouldn't the Empires be a teensy bit mad at us about that, maybe?
Yeah, but that's the thing where you have to balance things that would make sense if you look at it from lore or roleplay, and when you have to look at it that EVE is still a game and it needs to be playable. And if you make this choice and all of a sudden you're taking massive standing hits with Empire or Empires, grinding those back up is incredibly hard, because it's not like security standings where you can bribe your way through with security tags. That really is a massive grind back to level 1 agents.
You remember when I said that thing about fixing the faction warfare stuff like literally 30 seconds ago? So
this was just a reply on why it doesn't make sense.
No, I'm doubling down on what you just said. Yeah. So the biggest problem is in faction warfare, the act of being in faction warfare for a long period of time, A, while you're in faction warfare, you're locked out of half, if not all of HiSec, and B, if you do it the quote-unquote wrong way, then you could be locked out of chunks of HiSec for the rest of that character's existence. And this does two things. One, it makes it so that for 5 years, there are things that I want to do in this game that I just can't, because I committed to a thing that doesn't allow me to do other things. And while that thing that I'm committed to doing is fun, after years and years and years of not being able to do anything else because of this is what I'm doing, I was super relieved to finally hang up the cloak. And one of the reasons why I've struggled to get back into faction warfare now, because I don't want to be locked out of all of space, And so the fact that I can go into these systems and play my little games, and then afterwards come out and hang up my little red badge and be just like a normal dude that's doing normal stuff outside of those systems, like, I get it. It doesn't thematically work, but oh my God. And not just on myself individually, but like, you want to talk about uneven balance of power, right? Like, you want to tell players that they have to permanently or in some lasting way that's going to require work to destroy their capability of operating in high security space, or even just a chunk of high security space. Like, that is one of the biggest reasons why people do not engage in faction warfare. So I'm not sure if adding a suppressor on it just works from a game design perspective.
It doesn't, and it's annoying from my perspective, but it makes sense. I'd actually like to touch on that faction warfare bit a little bit more. This really does feel like faction warfare maybe 1.8. The way the sites work, where you're pushing the bar back and forth between each other. We've replaced iHub bashes with just moving into the next stage. The faction navies that are present that you shoot. And to me, the biggest bit, public fleets are exactly the same. Actually, in some ways they're worse, in some ways they're better. But it really, really, really feels like faction warfare. Like, I've been part of the siege of Flossiswin in Minmatar faction warfare off and on for the past couple of months. And when I did an 18-hour stint of FCing in some stupid Caldari system that I didn't actually care about anyways, I was like, wow, I'm back in Flossiswin. I can't tell the difference. It really feels like faction warfare in both the good and the bad parts. And I
think
really
everybody.
Update faction warfare and use this as a template, because this is way better than what we've got right now.
That's the thing I believe everybody will agree on, that as a template, it is amazing for future content. Like, it has so much promise for so many different fields or aspects of EVE.
I would say that if you're going to want to have something like that, I mean, this goes into kind of what I've cheekily done with Kybernauts, which is to say that, we want the Kybernauts Corp to be put into the Triglavian alliance in game. And while that's probably honestly not going to happen, but it'd be neat. What I'm really trying to say is this idea that, like, well, they're refugees. We are choosing to be refugees. So if that is a path, that's interesting. I'm really interested in exploring that. But there has to be something on the other side. So I would say that if I'm locking myself out of HiSec, I need to be irrevocably gaining access to something else.
Yeah, absolutely. If you have to do that, I will also say dropping in and out of faction warfare is totally a thing you can do.
Not when you're the CEO.
Yeah, it is.
I had an alt character, not like long-standing member, like unbroken tenureship within the corporate. I know. I had alts. It worked, but I mean, like, it was just like, I want to fucking fly around with Ash. Wouldn't it be nice?
Our alliance goes in and out.
Wouldn't it be nice?
You should try it.
It's okay. I actually do now bounce in and out of Aetheron whenever I want.
It does help a lot.
It does. It does. Anywho, let's see. So, Rorvos, the time period after that, we take 2 stars, big weekend of conflict and activity. And then I feel like we kind of go into the next week after that, which is week, 3 now at that point? Which was the week prior. And we grinded through a whole bunch of stuff. And this week was like the exact opposite of the week before. So what, like 2-3 systems that all we predicted to go liminal didn't. There was quite a few Edencom minor victories too. It felt like there was a week of just like, well, 2 things. First of all, there was a long period of time in which it felt like there was no good systems at all. There was no HiSec systems at all, and then like maybe only one low-sec system for a little while, or whatever, or just like a whole bunch of low-sec systems. So it almost felt like it was like stalling or whatever, but there was this like drift, and then we had all of these failed progressions. And I really felt that this, like, the frustration lock in at that point. What was the experience for you guys?
I think that part of the expectation has been a side effect of one of ARC's primers, where there was a analysis that, like, okay, these are the systems that have been invaded, and there was a clear focus on certain star types. That seemed to be so accurate, especially with news articles saying that CCP was starting to wonder if maybe they had a leak somewhere, as that was factual. Like, this is fact. This will always happen. I think it's clear that there are more things in place that are going to determine if a system can go beyond a minor victory. We just haven't found it yet.
Right. Yeah, that's actually a really good point. I think that one of the things that a lot of people have run into is the idea that there is one factor. Like, if this star didn't go, it must be something that is true about this star that isn't true about the other thing. What is the one thing if it's not the fact that it's a blue star, and not the fact that there are multiple conditions that are required to test against that could qualify or not qualify. I feel it's worth noting, and I'm sure people will be mad at me, but like I believe that CCP's confirmed it to other people too, so I'll just say it. I asked several times, and it seems that progression is not related to how the stellar reconnaissance plays out. That it is a system can be progressed into liminality and can be fortified. But like, so when Edencom wins, then if that system can be fortified, it goes into fortification. But what makes a system capable of being fortified or capable of being liminal is the piece of the puzzle that we need to figure out. Not all systems can be liminal. Not all systems can be fortified.
CCP Sledgehammer has stated that, in theory, one could work out what the pattern is. There
Right.
is a pattern. It is workable. What the pattern is, you know,
So
is an exercise for the reader.
right, exactly. So this is a fun puzzle, and a lot of people have been really, really excited and engaged in this. And I think that this has been a major, major factor of the excitement involved in invasions. But at the same time, because we have so little information, and because we're working off of assumptions almost exclusively most of the time, this has led us to setting ourselves up for false expectations. And then when those false expectations are proven incorrect, it almost feels as if like the system failed. And so, while this week should have been more like, wow, we don't understand anything, it's more, I feel like the major takeaway that people got was, man, none of this works. And I'm like, I don't understand why people come to that conclusion. I mean, I understand why people come to that conclusion, but I don't know. I wish that the people that were investing in their theories focused more on like so many people that we run into told the lore, like, or they'll like, oh well, we did analysis and we checked every single system and we just predict that this has got 56% chance of being taken or whatever it is that they come up with. And I'm like, well, have you read the Rasnaborg reports? And they're like, what do you mean? And I'm like, go read the freaking document, man. Like I feel like the answers are in front of us, but so often we're looking at this as a mechanical problem and not a quote unquote lore problem, that it's causing us to like chase our own tail quite a bit. What is your guys' experience?
I think that people definitely buy a little bit too hard into their own pet theories. I have seen some really interesting theories for what progresses a system before, as well as like what it takes to turn a system into either liminality or a fortress. There's some real head scratchers of you think that's important? Sure.
Yeah, I'm down for bad theories, but it's the that plus the lack of information means that people are getting angry or projecting failure on CCP.
Well, then when that doesn't happen, I think part of it does lay on CCP, unfortunately, because there were acknowledged bugs in the first week, especially the first couple of days and before they implemented minor victories, right? Like there was a lot of confusion. Why did this disappear? You had Aldic, which the Trigs pushed, and I'd actually like to touch on that at some point. And then it just disappeared. Matoken, which I was busy trying really hard to push when I could, and it just disappeared. That there were a number of these sites that disappeared and then they come back, and so I think a lot of people are at the point where they go, okay, was that supposed to happen or is this another bug? Which is unfortunate, but pretty understandable.
So to that point, I want to say that like CCP Convict was in the Discord with the Kybernaut forces when the system hit final liminality and when that bug occurred. And I wasn't there, but I've talked to many, many people that were there, and you could hear the disappointment, the crushedness in his voice when it didn't work, right? Like pop the champagne, nothing comes out. So, but that being said, like within a half an hour, we got the details that it was a bug and what was wrong, and that would be fixed. The next day, it was fixed. Then from that point on, we had one more bug, which was significantly more obvious as being a bug, which was hilarious. But my point is that like when it has been a bug, they have gone out of their way to very quickly and clearly express that. And so to me, that has meant like, oh, well, when they don't come out and say it's a bug, we should probably err on the side of assuming that it's not a bug. And yet the rest of the population doesn't feel that way.
I agree with you, but it is, let us say, not unusual for CCP to have bugs in EVE. So that there's certainly and I don't know if this is more on the generally the Edencom side. A lot of Edencom line members will say, and even some of the leadership, really treat this entire chapter as almost an attack by CCP on them. I've seen a lot of the same language used as when Phoebe happened to certain alliances that used to use Cynos a lot, which we'll leave unnamed.
Right, so they're not playing a fun game.
Right. This is an attack on them. This is something that they're being forced to do. They don't want to do it necessarily. It's not fun. This is a drag that's killing them. I know that there were some people who were living in Vale, one of whom I didn't particularly like, but they felt like they were being pushed out of their system, and when it went down, you could almost see the subs being canceled. And it's people who have by default an uncharitable expectation.
Well, there's also a large problem with testing whether or not people are really here for Triglavian content or whether or not they're here with loot eyes because of the patch overlap. So Vale is a very good example of a system where there were a lot of people on about an hour before downtime attacking a system. And one of the station owners obviously hadn't been on and the station was abandoned. They logged in, fueled the station, and then a ton of people that were pushing the system in favor of the Triglavians left.
So,
right, because their target of opportunity there disappeared, and they weren't actually pushing it. They were just pushing it to get it to low sec so they could shoot that without declaring war.
Right.
Yeah, I think that's a concern too. But the uncharitable predisposition of people on the Edencom side, I think, plays into it a lot. And of course, despite us saying one side or the other, well, actually, I was going to say it's more permeable than faction warfare, but knowing the number of people who have alts on both sides is probably about the same. People are in both channels. People are still talking to each other. Some people refuse to or just troll or whatever, but there's a lot of cross-pollination between the sides. So I think when the Edencom guys who are uncharitable about it go, oh, this is a bug, and then someone from the Trig side picks up and says, oh, Edencom says this is a bug. And
yeah, there's definitely been a lot of propaganda.
Game of telephone play, and yeah, the obvious happens.
Yeah, no, telephone's polite. Outright propaganda has definitely occurred, and I even said this back in like the Rarvos days. It was like, guys, the only thing that believing that there's a bug that makes it so that we can't progress anything does is cause us to fail to do something that we otherwise could have done.
Yeah, right. And the same thing on our side. We've had people go, oh, it's not worth pushing that system because it's not going to go to Fortress or it's not going to go to Liminality even if they win. And I'm like, are you certain about that? You want to bet on that? But there's lots of things like that.
Yeah. So I want to circle back because I got contested earlier, and so I had to go sort out some numbers. So on the regards of minor victories at the moment, Edencom has hold on. I actually reversed it. So Edencom, the ones that are sorry, in what I wrote down, I did Trig for Edencom and Edencom for Trig because I was thinking about who runs them, not who won them. So for Triglavian minor victories, there is 5 Caldari Highsec, 2 Amar, 1 Galente, 1 Minmatar. For Edencom minor victories, which are valuable to the Triglavian side, there are 0 Caldari, 4 Amar, 1 Galente, and 1 Minmatar. So the issue is that since any given minor victory can only support one, up to maybe three or 4 or 5 people worth of ISK generation, and so I often go to those places and there'll be 2 or 3 people already in it, which has caused me to have lots of good times, and I've made friends and I've hung out with Sukateria for like a couple hours when I didn't expect it to. But when there's only one Galente minor victory, my concern is that, like, on the one hand, it sucks that players don't know how valuable minor victories are, But at the same time, like, if they did, then minor victories would be swamped to the point where they were just as useless as any of the rest of invasions. So it's a tricky problem for me.
Yeah, and I think part of it is a lot of people just sort of assume that it's going to be farmed to death by somebody else and who wants to compete with that. Like there's not going to be sites in there available when you show up. You figure there's going to be 5 people in there permanently farming them in their optimized multi-boxed 3 nesters or whatever.
Yeah, well, I mean,
Why even
if
bother
that's the
going?
case, I just go in and feed off of the 3-nester Ultimate Team multi-boxers because they run them quickly.
Well, I mean, sure, you can just steal some of their money, but
I mean, I'm not stealing. I'm contributing. I'm going in and I get paid out too, me and my material. And if you're in the site, then we run it together. And if you're not in the site, then I run it by myself.
but I do feel like there's a lot of that. It's that somebody already in there, it's not worth it. There's only, I mean, you didn't say a total number. I want to say it's like 7 minor victories.
So basically the way it works is that the reward is the same. So if you have 1, 2, or 3 people, everybody gets paid out the maximum amount, which is like 4.5 million for Edencom, 6 million for Kybernauts. That is given to all 3 of the first 3 people. So basically there's what, like 13, 14 million on the table for Edencom and 18 million on the table for Kybernauts. And if you get above 3 people, then that maximum pool is divided evenly among all people who are eligible for contribution.
Yeah. But that quickly becomes diminishing returns.
Yep, absolutely. And that's not my thing. Like, I want these minor victories to be a very valuable piece, but right now there's literally just not enough of them for what they would need to be.
To make it worth it to consider going out to farming them. Like, we've got one in my back door, Aldic, right?
Mm-hmm.
I've raised the issue with the Alliance. Who wants to go do that? No one cares about doing it because, A, it's decent, but not that great-esque. There's better ways to make money if you know how, right?
Right. So I don't really want to dwell too much on...
Why wouldn't you be fighting in a fortress system?
Right, exactly. Especially since, well, I mean, my answer to that is because of how often recently that there hasn't been a high-sec invasion anywhere for any in any state with sites. Right, but I mean, if you, I want to run sites for making money. Like, I'm just going to go in there with my material and grind through stuff. That's what I want to do right now. Like, that's not available for a lot of people.
Yeah, that's it. It's not.
So as a note, the maximum payout is 59.
Yes, after that, you cannot get any more payout.
That is what the UI error says. Correct. I've never actually. Have you guys actually hit a fleet with more than 15? Did it work?
Yeah.
Oh wow. Okay, that's cool. For like the last year, I've just been like, that's what the UI says when you don't do any damage at all. So I just guessed.
Yep, top 59 people.
Can confirm.
That's clever.
Top 59. If you're at number 60 or lower, you're at shit out of luck.
I mean, that said, at 59 people in an emerging conduit, the people who are in the money aren't exactly in the money.
It's fair.
Mm-hmm.
So the issue that I have though with the with the minor victories is that like I feel like Edencom like has a much bigger advantage position in this spot because you can look at a star and be like, that's not yellow or blue. That's going to go with minor victory, almost certainly. But for us, I don't know what fortifies things.
I'm still going to say it's not a given.
No, it's not a given. But here's the thing. If I want there to be more Edencom minor victories, the path towards making that happen, there's no logical, like I have no strategy to get there. I can't be like, that's a system I should allow them to do because it won't progress. But you guys could do that. You could be like, that's a system that I want to be a minor victory. So we're just going to let the trig win that one.
Yeah. The problem is, and I'm pretty sure this would be a problem for you too if you ever actually tried that. Good luck. Good luck convincing all of the people you need to on your side to actually do that. Speaking from the Edencom side, I realize we're more fractured than you in many ways, but even convincing everybody to go to the same system to fight in general is hard.
I agree. But I would say that that's an artifact of it still being pretty early.
Sure, but like, I mean, I'll bring back up faction warfare again. How many sieges of systems have there been where you've got daily fighting, hourly fighting for 23 hours a day, and you still can't get 10 people to show up there because they're off in some system 20 jumps away, just convinced that they're going to flip that by themselves.
Solid point. But I'm going to actually spin off of this so as to not make this thing just go on for absolute ever, and circle back because I feel like this is a good touching point. People were talking earlier, somebody mentioned about talking about LowSec later. One of the things I found remarkable to me was my expectation was that when all of the systems went LowSec, the vast majority of people would be like, I guess there's nothing to do right now, because like on one side, people thought that they were making HiSec into NullSec, and therefore that was their primary motivation. In fact, there's so many discussions about how it's not for ISK. And then on the other side, Edencom is saving HiSec. Oh my gosh, why would you want to turn HiSec into NullSec? And so it strikes me the most odd, the most interesting, the way that especially since you guys are like, everybody's talking about how overtaxed they are, and yet we continue to push into low-sec systems that don't seem to quite jive with our actual like motivations. It isn't quite the level of reward, even if it does progress, and yet people still have been very willing to go out there and make shit happen. However, I haven't been one of them, so why don't you tell me, you guys who have been, how has that actually been? What was that process like? Transitioning from like, okay, well, we've taken these systems, now all we have left is low-sec systems. What is it like for a low-sec system to be a target?
I'll be honest, for me, it's been really disappointing. From looking at Raravos, I'm like, okay, next low-sec system that comes, I'm going to be able to have a boatload of fun murdering every Trig supporter I can find. And then I go into these systems and I'm like, there aren't any Trig supporters. I don't know if it's a reflection of my time zone or the fact that I care about Minmatar systems and Trigs don't. I don't know what it is, but I've struggled to find Trig supporters to murder. And it's been super disappointing for me. So if you guys could just like bring more freighters in to these systems, just, leave a jump freighter untethered at the sun, whatever strikes your fancy, so that I can get some kills, I'll appreciate it.
Here's what I find so funny about that is that, primarily what we have been directing our pushes toward has to do with the ARC documentation.
Debs is not part of ARC.
Oh, he's not. Okay.
He is a greatly appreciated associate, because we do have a lot of interactions and we do communicate a lot, but he's not officially part of ARC.
Okay. Well then, all the same, we have largely, and it might be changing because who knows why things flip and things don't flip, but we've been mainly basing it on that list of suns and that list of systems associated with them.
Well, I mean, I'm even talking about Veil. I showed up in there day one that it flipped, right as it flipped, and we came in a couple of times. I ran a flashpoint in there, and there was just no Trigs to shoot. Which honestly really diminished the amount of time I cared about putting into it. I felt like, goes low sec, I don't have anybody to shoot. I could try and grind it back to readout, but am I really going to pull that off on my own? Probably not. So personally, like, the low sec's been pretty disappointing.
So here's an interesting thing, just from watching like leadership chats on Kybernaut side. I'm obviously not in leadership chats on Edencom side, but and just generally thinking about my own processing of the situation, like I would think that, what I've noticed is that the strategy is almost one of avoidance, right? Like low sec is such a diminished power level because it requires so much extra effort, or rather, there are fewer people. It's a bigger effort to pull a system in low sec, even if there is less resistance from actual players. So what is generally seen is almost like what you would see in nullsec, where it's more about avoiding conflict with your enemy, so that way you can get your own shit done, rather than coming in direct conflict with the opponent. That being said, that theory seems to contest or fall apart, because there have been a couple of times in which there's just been one low sec system in play, period. Has that played out well at all? Have there been any low-sec conflicts past Rarvos that has ended up being like, hell yeah?
I don't think so. I don't think there's been strong fighting in any low-sec system past Rarvos. Like I said, Vale, we managed to grab a fleet of some Drekovics once.
Is it that difficult to see which side the other side is pushing and then like go and contest it?
It's not that it's difficult; it's that there's no one there.
Right.
In Molden Heath, I can't remember the name of the system off the top of my head. It's right off of Istadart. Zenuria was over there, and we tried several times to go in there. I actually tried to blops them, and then found out that you can't actually light covert sinos in the site, which was super disappointing. Let me tell you.
Wait, which site?
Any of them. Did you not know this? Oh boy, I've given away operational
No.
intelligence.
I mean, whatever. But so you're saying the system that was low sec
Yep.
now is
You
invaded.
cannot light them in the site. They're dead space.
The minor conduit is dead space.
Well, I will say at least the Edencom side is. Because I was in an Edencom site trying to
The
drop on
Edencom
troops.
side, the forward post is. It's not dead
Yeah.
space.
Yes, it is. You can warp in it, but you cannot light a sino in it.
That's interesting. That's actually, I think, Dutch. Is that not a change?
I don't know. I don't have that info.
Okay, I
I've
gotta look into
never
that.
Heard of anybody lighting a sino in one of those sites?
I had prior, things were really different in Chapter 1 and 2, but these are functionally the same sort of sites. So, like, the Tier 1 site, Tier 0, Tier 1 being not dead space, and Tier 2 being dead space was one of the tactical, like, considerations that you dealt with. But now I don't actually know whether or not... Ooh, all right. I digress.
Pretty sure
Move
it
on.
was your version of a minor, but I won't swear to it.
No, yeah, it is. Yeah. So minor victories, I always thought that minor victories could light Sinos, but either way, carry on.
No, I mean your version of a Tier 1 site.
Yeah, which
Is
would be
what
a
I tried to
staging
light.
area.
Staging area, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I'm pretty sure it was a staging area that I tried to light in, but I won't swear to it.
Yeah, well, no, the Dead Space one is very obvious because the big black, spiky, shiny rocks of Rakavine.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. Good to know.
Yeah,
So
there we
talking
go.
of
Have some
lighting-
pre-operational intelligence. You're welcome.
Huzzah.
Talking of lighting Sinos, what's everyone's opinion on the fact that the high-sec systems that are now null are not true null?
God bless them. Make all of
Yeah,
them low
it's
sec
great.
like it.
It's bloody brilliant.
I want bubbles, but like
Death
that's
to
just a
all
personal
supers. I would like bubbles and bushes because those are two of the only forcible positioning tools in the game, and I think positioning is underutilized. So forceful positioning is really good. But you know what? If I have to give up bubbles and bushes to get rid of supers, I'm willing to make that sacrifice.
It's funny that
Yeah,
you
I
say
have
that
to-
because what I want is bushes and bombs.
I don't
And the
like
reason why-
bombs
so-
much.
So, well, wait, it may not have been bombs. Either way, I don't want bubbles because I don't. So the thing is that some of these things are suppressive, and some of these things are enabling. So bushing enables different kinds of gameplay and different strategies and different techniques that can be executed on. Bubbles make it so that you don't have to gate the camp or camp the gate as well. It does the work for
I
you.
will agree to that. I do still like them for force positioning because it does force you to warp at different ranges and it acts as denial, and I think that's good. But I do agree that bubbles are suppressive in that
Well,
way. So you know what?
let's
How
say
about
hate
we
bubbles.
agree? We meet in the middle and we say bushes only and nothing else.
What about bushes and Higg bubbles? Because those are tied to a ship. Get rid of the ship that can't receive remote support, and bam.
Yeah, I would say anchorable bubbles would be a sufficient restriction, but it's also important to note that a lot of these things, from my understanding, were technical issues that they couldn't modify. So just being like, hey, CCP, you should totally like let us have bushes. Like it just may not be that easy.
Yeah, I understand, but it'd be nice, right?
It would be. Yeah, and I think it's an important discussion because like I said, like, so Sinos, I think everyone's happy that there are these systems without Sinos.
Oh yeah.
Bombs, some people are on the fence about it because they're very suppressive of very specific strategies. And I think that one of the important things about these systems overall is that this provides something, a meta that has never existed before, and everybody's kind of cried out for, which is the pro battleship meta for PvP. Like that's why I started calling the System 2 Jumps from Jita Content Pit. Not because I thought that there's always going to be something there, but like if you want to host a tournament, if you want to live do a stream, if you want to do a frigate free-for-all, like that is now just the system to do it. It's the most logistically easy, lowest on the server strain, place to just do whatever the hell they want. And it's also the most difficult to disrupt. They can't Sino into it. They can't bubble up your gates. They can't bomb your stuff, all that kind of stuff. And so, I think that... I hope that over time players will learn, like after this stuff kind of sinks in and maybe some people start to play with these systems and what their value can be, we'll see a lot more there. But maybe I'm just like overly romantic about the whole thing.
I'm more or less with you on that. I really hope that this is an experiment on how do people feel about these things, and as far as I can tell, the response has been yes, more of this stuff, please.
Yeah.
At the same time, players are responsible for that. Like at the same time, players are responsible for that with the massive organization and ability to have such massive capital and super capital fleets, and being in a position that if one side commits and really ends up on the receiving end, they are weakened to such a state that they can't. Yeah, they get pounced on by everybody else, so nobody is really in a position where they want to take that risk.
Sure,
right.
Remove caps from the equation, and now you don't have that problem anymore. You can replace battleships all day long. Never
no, but I'm just saying, like, it is a problem, but it's not a problem created by CCP.
Oh, sure. But I'm saying, fix the problem in lowsec. Leave nullsec to supers. They can have them all they want. But
right. Well,
removing them from lowsec would be amazing.
The issue.
The only condition I would put in is if you're gonna stop Sinos, don't stop the industrial Sinos, because that way you can still have your jump freighter logistical chain that you need to get things in and out of nullsec. Like, forget the offensive ones, but just find a way to only allow the industrial Sinos.
Yeah, and even if that allows blobsing, I still freighters. Oh, yeah, that's a good point. I mean, there's a lot to this, but and yeah, it brings back the glory days of having to escort your logistics in. That's actually, or your infrastructure in. Shit, I lost my point. Never mind.
I think the lowsec is good. I think that's what your question was originally, right? Is like, how do we feel about the lowsec and the pseudo lowsec, nullsec, whatever you want to call it? And the answer is great. More of this, please.
It's interesting because as a nullsec pilot, I hate it.
I want to stress to people, because like I even see this a little bit in chat, and I see this all the time when discussing these kinds of things. I want to reemphasize that very few like cohesive, cogent Kybernauts want to like destroy all of HiSec. Like, let's be super practical. If when this whole thing is said and done, months from now, and we have managed to capture 50 some odd systems, that would be incredible, right? Probably likely closer to like 20. There may be less than 70 total to find that we could potentially convert. So this isn't about making HiSec not exist anymore. This is about the construction of a new kind of space. And one of the things that might be interesting is the fact that two different kinds of space, because if low-sec liminal systems function differently than high-sec liminal systems, that's something also worth exploring.
Yeah, and they do, as far as I know.
That's my understanding too.
Like a lot of the problems that you guys have brought up are not really problems that I've seen, so it's interesting to see that perspective as well, because we still get battleship fleet combat in OSSEC, so obviously it's not something that you get, and that actually does suck for faction warfare.
Think about Mr. Hyde or 404 or any of those streamers that just wants to go out in a fucking Hyperion and wreck some dudes until they get taken down. Like, this is the place for that.
Mhm.
Hold on. What? Small balls. Who was that?
Zarvos.
Zarvox.
Yeah, Zarvox.
Yeah. Small balls.
Yeah.
MC dot small balls.
Exactly, like 1v1 at the sun in Content Pit. Like, I don't. This feels like a no-brainer to me, but we'll see.
Yeah, faction warfare where people are using hells to camp gates is just not engaging content when the majority of people are in faction warfare so they can use frigates without getting blapped out of the sky. That having a Instalock stiletto grabbing people as they slide into gates so that their hell can launch fighter bombers at it is just it's not ideal, you know?
I mean, this is sliding very, very slightly sideways, but at least CCP have shown that there are ways to fix that problem, because they could technically give you faction Sino jammers in the same way that there are Edencom Sino jammers now. So there is a solution at least that could potentially be applied.
Yeah,
Man.
and I want to be clear, like, I'm not realistically suggesting delete all supers and caps tomorrow, even from low sec. Like, that's it's a very long thing to talk about, and I'm making some pithy quotes, but yeah, it's at least interesting. I think one of the big problems we have right now is that so far none of the, correct me if I'm wrong here, none of the high sec systems that have become final liminality actually touch low sec yet. Is that right?
That's correct, I think.
That's true.
That seems correct.
Right. I think we might actually see conflict in these past when final liminality happens, when and if we actually get a system that touches low sec.
Oh, because they can come straight in?
Low sec, because you can go straight in. I mean, I don't know about you, but half the people I know in faction warfare can't go in high sec if they want to.
That's a very interesting point. Yeah. We have actually
which system you go into. Like Minmatar faction warfare people, I've asked them for help in my wars, the way I help them in theirs, and they're like, sure. Oh wait, high sec? Yeah. Unless you want to spend 10 billion ISK on security tags for our entire alliance. No.
I mean, if that, going back to the faction warfare problem, they could just be in one of the factions, and then, like, every single fleet that we have at least somebody, because it's exactly the same. Like, if we look at this as a more advanced feature of faction warfare, then that means it's attractive to people that are in faction warfare. A lot of those people may not necessarily leave their corp because they don't have to, but that means that, like, now their relationship of where they are in faction warfare also opens up which sites that they can go run, which is interesting.
Sure.
And that may actually be why you see more activity in low sec systems than I would have expected, because there's more people that were in faction warfare or whatever that are, I don't know, interesting.
I don't know. Like I said, I just haven't seen much activity at all in them. There's been a handful of things. There was a Galente system where 2 supers were running the sites, and that's just unengageable for me, so I just kind of let them be. But largely, there hasn't been, from what I can tell, much actual player versus player content. It's been, oh, the other fleet showed up, they can beat us or they can fight us well, we're not gonna touch it, everybody dock up, wait for them to go away. I mean, typical low sec stuff. I'm not saying that, like, they're obligated to fight me or something. I'm not saying they're terrible people for running away. Like, when I drop 40 stealth bombers on you and you've got 10 dudes, yeah, you should probably bail. But I haven't seen much fighting there.
Yeah,
if I can
completely
bounce back and forth between a couple of subjects, I think that part of the lower response for low sec from Edencom has to do with it being low sec. I mean, earlier this week, I jump a cruiser into low sec, I'm tackled by a cruiser, and I'm being blapped by a carrier. There's a lot of people that just don't particularly enjoy PvP because of those kind of odds, so there is a big gap with people that are willing to go from high sec to low sec to run the sites in support of Edencom when they're not that big on PvP. And at the same time, there are a lot of people who enjoy the group PvE in high sec, such as the incursions and the chapter 1 and chapter 2 content, and it's no longer the case where you have to worry about making sure that you don't screw up with the NPCs, and if there's another fleet, that you don't do anything that might upset the balance, where you actually have to get to the part where people are going to be paranoid with as soon as somebody else shows up in local, like, oh my god, what's going to happen? Because one sign away, you could get a massive escalation warping in on the site, and that's definitely affecting part of the willingness of a lot of people to go for low sec, because they might be in favor of PvE and the content, but they're not a big fan of the PvP.
Yes, absolutely. And in fact, I was very, very disappointed that when Sakenta, which was a 1.0, dropped to first liminality, it took a 0.8 hit. I was hoping it would become a 5, and thus we could stay and experience the first liminality content as highseckers. So that was a massive disappointment to me and a lot of my fleet members.
I definitely think that if there is, like, if it's a 0.5 and you hit first luminality, yep, it should definitely be low sec. If it's like a 0.8 or a 1.0 first luminality, if it goes to like 0.6 or 0.5 and that there is still a phase, you're going to see a much stronger willingness to keep pushing. Where people say, hey, you know, I want to keep pushing, but as soon as it hits first luminality and it goes low sec, there are so many people who just in there for the PvP, and I don't have the ability to keep replenishing every ship that I lose, so I'll tag out as soon as it's close to hitting first luminality. Because that's definitely one thing that I notice is a bit of a struggle. With people who fly regularly with me in the past, like, not everybody is willing to go PvP. We switched from our typical doctrine to a shield RT doctrine. That was a bit of a hassle to pull it through, and this is just something that I have to say, for as being part of ARC, it was a major hassle when a lot of people was expecting ARC, which is a research and scientists group, to say, hey, come on, you need to take the lead and go show us what to do, and you have to do everything. It's like, but we're not equipped for that. We're not even, like, we don't have the infrastructure to tell people that just want to get into it, never been in a fleet before, to tell them what to do, because we are just not equipped for that. We are a small research group. So with that regard, massive thanks to Dark Zero for setting up the EdenCon Defense Initiative Discord and in-game channel, because part of it was that I think people were massively expecting ARC, our Target Research Consortium, to take the lead, but we are not that group to do that, because we're just not designed to operate that way. And when ARC did not do it, and we did try to step up, but it's just such a massive change if you have to go from research to full-on faction warfare combat readiness, that we were not equipped for that people just tagged out, like, hey, if ARC isn't doing anything, we're just not going to bother.
Yeah, so I mean, some of the in quotes combat that we've had has actually been very enjoyable. Again, that 1.0 system, there was a point where we were a 40-man fleet running miners and emerging conduits, battling a 20-man logistics fleet repairing the Triglavians, and it was probably the most fun I've had with the content.
Watching. So, what's funny is that I remember that happening, and somebody came in afterwards and was like, well, that was a waste of 3 hours or something like that. And they were talking about, like, yeah, like, you know, we were repping it and they finally destroyed it. And like, he came in with this idea that, like, it was a waste. But very quickly, like, he realized, and the discussion kind of revealed the fact that, like, no, this was a struggle of will between these two different groups. It's just like, here is this semi-arbitrary rule set. You know, you can repair it, but you can't attack them. They can attack it, but not you. you know, and who's going to win, and this battle of wills played out, and that's really, in my opinion, what EVE is all about. It's not just about shooting each other; it's about the contention of wills of different players and what they expect and what they want out of the sandbox. So I think that the game is, or this feature has done oodles and oodles of good at opening up like the friendship machine and the amount of emergent gameplay, emergent strategies. You know, the fact that somebody like Cable can like go from being a social pariah from stealing Sodios all day long to suddenly like helping train people in how to do stuff in order to advance stuff, because it's like the amount of experience and just the sheer amount of tasks and skill sets that are going to be required to be effective in these environments require us to work together and learn from each other in a way that I feel has broadly been very successful. But does anybody have anything that they want to say about it, like as it's moved forward, how you feel about it now?
I generally feel that everything is like we've settled into a bit of a routine, but it's not a great one yet. I feel really that point we talked about at length earlier on the length of sites, where it seems like the beginning is a struggle and then everything snowballs in the end. That's backwards, and I think fixing that would be a huge benefit to getting engagement with the content, allowing people to experience the high-end content, potentially in a situation where you're not worried that if you don't blitz the Shred site, the Trigs are going to take it, and being able to actually run sites for money because you're going to be there longer, and the Trigs are fighting for some other system, and they've got a ways to grind through to get to final liminality there. And vice versa, where people get to experience this different content in ways that aren't massively oversized fleets running through them at breakneck speed because you have to. I think that's the biggest issue right now. Cleaning up some of the balance, making it so that Caldari aren't pushovers and so that Amarr aren't murderous. I'm obviously in favor of Amarr being less murderous just in general. But fixing some of that balance, I feel like that's less of a problem. It really is the speed, and it really is experiencing the content in something other than these giant pickup fleets where you're just blitzing it for no reward other than the reward of saying that you did it.
Yeah. I'm saying this now as someone with over 20 years experience in user experience and psychology and understanding what motivates people to move forward or engage with anything. And there is a point to which this event has gotten us to just far enough, and then it leaves us hanging, and I think that's fine. I mean, anyone who expected the Suns to just automatically within 24 hours have something happen, that's just silly. Obviously it's going to take time, but I think the piece that's missing, and I bias of an FC trying to keep people moving, is there's just a piece missing, CCP. There's just something missing to convince us to keep going, particularly in the context of the strange flips of minor victories for systems that, based on everything that we know or thought we knew, shouldn't have been minor victories, but should have actually gone to first liminality. There's still a hook. We need just a little bit more of a hook to be able to say, and look at this other cool thing over here that happened. Come get in fleet, come join us, and we'll see some more cool things. And I would say now, having talked to the EdenCom people, more so, the EdenCom side needs something. Throw them a bone. They've got to be working for something more than, just loyalty that's not rewarded by the horrible fascist overlords of EdenCom.
I totally agree, and it seems like if there was a way for, I don't know, because I'm not an EdenCom person, and I'm not probably a person who would align that way, but it seems like if there was a way for them to PvP a little bit to earn some high sec, that would be a good thing.
I'm gonna chime in here with just a thing that I also repeated a lot of times when chapter 3 just started. It still just started. There is still probably going to be a lot more to come. I feel that what's happening right now is the lines are being drawn in the sand, and there's going to be a point where things are going to move forward. So I wouldn't be surprised if minor victories are going to turn into something else, and then the final luminalities are going to be at the center of something else, and that we're just going to see a lot more to come. And this is just the first step in the final chapter of this story.
So I have a question on this regard. So I have a concern because what I'm hearing and what I keep thinking about when it comes to this missing piece is that the thing that's missing is proper feedback. You know, like I keep making jokes about poking the semiosis console, but like it makes sense that not all stars progress. It does not make sense that we've been busting our ass for 3 weeks and we haven't even gotten a good job, right? Like if the Triglavians want us to feel that these things are important, then they need to make sure that they demonstrate to us that they're important. It feels almost like we're being tricked by the people that we want to work with, and I'm sure that from the sounds of things, Edencom almost sounds even more deceptive. It feels like it's almost an abusive relationship where it's like, dance monkey dance, good, now you can keep your home. And
So
I'm not sure if that's really great.
What you're saying is that the faction that's being attacked on site by sleepers, who don't even attack us on site, is lying to you? No.
Well, so I did have an actual question that I wanted to ask that I find far more interesting. So I'm going to change my question a little bit without any warning, which also is thematic to my question, which is that like there's already so little known, and every single event that's happening is being picked apart, which means if something changes, then that could actually, like, unless it was somehow extremely well communicated, it could potentially throw off what little like grasp of understanding that we have. And more importantly, we've demonstrated, and we've even discussed here and lamented, how out of it most of the people in the world are. So like we're already having enough problems with people being dialed in. If they start making aggressive changes, is there a chance that this could actually end up being more of a problem, even if those changes were inherently good?
I think it boils down to communication. One thing I've been saying, my sort of pithy line, see if I can remember my exact wording now, is like there's a difference between creating a sense of mystery and a sense of just not having any idea of what's going on. Right? For there to be a mystery, there have to be threads for you to unravel and things for you to find out. When things just happen with no rhyme or reason, or no apparent rhyme or reason, that's not engaging, that's off-putting, right? So I think if things change, they need to be communicated. It doesn't have to be a full video production or anything, but give us text in the local chat or something of like, we have achieved victory and the sun will now become a black hole. Ha ha ha, everyone in here is dead. Like, give us something that tells us that things are progressing. Give us a hint of what they're going to progress to, and then actually do it. Like, it's all communication.
My kingdom for the world news being put into the launcher and into the client, because the problem is that a lot of these things are there. Like if they even just took the in other news, which are literally ticker line items, and just put them at the bottom of like your launcher or something like that, and then you can click on it and it links you to the world news. Like the problem is that
put them at the bottom of the market window where the useless ticker that no one ever cares about is.
I actually use that, by the way.
Do you really?
Yeah. I even have a special. You can set up a folder, and anything, if you name it correctly, I think it is, then you can put stuff in that folder and customize what shows up on that ticker. All of the Triglavian mats, Plex, and a bunch of other stuff that I watch that just scrolls by. And I mean, like, not all the time, but occasionally I'll catch like, oh shit, ZPCs went up like a whole bunch.
I think I can partially chime in. I feel I can partly chime in because I've been involved with ARC for well over a year now. CCP is good at putting the hints out there, but you have to work to find them. And not everybody that finds it or stumbles upon the hint knows what he or she found. And the tricky part is if you start dropping hints or communicate, it becomes really hard to decide, okay, so how are we going to do it? And how are we going to do it in such a way that it isn't that obvious what needs to be done, that people that want to look into it and make the discovery, oh, so that's probably how it works, that those still can do their thing. And at the same time, if you start to make communications that you have to avoid making it look like you're playing favorites. Because one of the things that I can absolutely confirm is that ARC is fortunate enough to have the right group of people that love digging into things and have the fortune that if one comes up with a theory, people look at it, poke holes at it, and a lot of it is backed up. And that way, even though it's tricky to work out what is happening, we've been able to get it right on a fairly regular basis. There's plenty of times where ARC has gotten it completely wrong. And it's really hard when people make the discoveries and share them, because that's a completely different part of content. Because you get a theory, it could be right, it could be wrong, like what we're looking at stars. That there was an analysis that showed that those were the most likely, but that doesn't mean that it's automatically going to be enough to make things happen one way or the other. There are more factors in play that just haven't been found out yet. And that's a bit of the puzzle, and not everybody is willing or knows where to get started, but it doesn't mean that the hints or the clues or the information is not out there.
So I feel like that's a common problem among those who are coming into this kind of late. We have two kind of people that hold on, let me take a step back. First of all, one of the things that this feature has definitely done is make the lore interesting and capture the imagination in a way that they have failed to do more than not in the history of Eve, for various reasons. But long story short, they've done it now, right? People are very interested in the lore now. But the issue is that this is a 18-year-old game, 19-year-old game now, with 20 plus years of lore, 3+ books, fiction, chronicles, world news. Well, I'm just saying, but most importantly, 19 years of inertia. 19 years of historical record of the player base being almost proud of how little they pay attention to the lore and how much they understand that, or how much they believe that there isn't anything going on. And so the issue here isn't just is it on the fence, right? It isn't just a matter of oh, it would be nice if they talked to us in the Semiosis console. Without constant in-your-face things happening from CCP, announcing that it is happening, it is far too easy for people to revert back to 19 years of inertia and just wave it off again. I still get people that I would say that more than half of the people that come to me because they're interested in this stuff, if they do bring up the drifters, the way that they bring it up was, man, I really wish that they would do something with the drifters someday soon, or something like that. As if these are completely disconnected things. People, it goes back to the people trying to figure out which suns are going to be invaded or which suns can be processed that haven't actually read the Rasnaborg's reports. We need to, as a community, I think, and CCP needs to, as a company, work better to globally educate ourselves in this universe because it matters now.
It's a tough thing to balance, because on the one hand you want to make things available, but at the same time, if there's different content on different difficulty access levels, some are low-hanging fruits, and other things is you really need to find your way up the tree, find the right branch to find other parts of the content, is that the people that pick things up or are used to the higher difficulty are going to grab away all the low-hanging fruits, and then people that might be able to, and the people that it might be designed to find, like the people that should be finding it to give them the reward for their efforts and as an incentive to keep trying and find the harder clues, they're going to miss out on that. So it is a really hard thing to even remotely get it right.
I'll say, for a somewhat different perspective on this, when Chapter 1 and 2, and previous to them, when we had the Semiosis consoles giving out the messages, the coded video messages, and those are being decoded, that was really incredibly engaging for a subset of people. And if you weren't engaged by Trigs because of any other reason, whether that's you're more focused on your current RP, the Empires, what the core of Eve actually is about, in case anybody forgot, or you were just not good at breaking codes, or you weren't interested in RP at all, or whatever the reason is, the few people that engaged with that were incredibly engaged with that, and everyone else was left out to dry.
Man, when this whole thing's over,
very
I'm
disappointing.
gonna kick everybody out and just pin you down and be like, so Seckle Clan, go. So just be prepared for that.
Sure.
We'll talk later. But no, like that's a solid point. And yeah.
From that point of view, I'm involved with a group of people that organize live events, and some people are really good at solving puzzles at extreme difficulty, and other people just don't care about that at all, or they are very interested, but they just can't handle that difficulty. Getting it right and having it accessible for the right people, that's an incredibly hard thing to get right, because not everybody is going to be interested in the same topic, not everybody is going to be interested in the same part of the puzzle that could be figured out.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm not suggesting that's an easy thing, but it is something to keep in mind that the content will engage different people differently, and that's fine insofar as it goes. But you have to make sure, and by you, I mean CCP, you have to make sure that you're engaging everybody else as well. It doesn't have to be equal or anything like that, but ensuring that you're not dropping people on the floor is important. I think that will also help with what you're saying, Ash, of making sure that people know about this, because if the only way you release information is these obscure coded messages, then only people who are interested in obscure coded messages are going to find out about it. So you have to make sure you release information in different ways and give different people the engagement with that.
Right, but the point is that what that does, even though if in the moment only a few people engage with it, what that does is it creates we are creating a living narrative. And so when these little bits and pieces happen, what the issue is that somebody hears about that and they're like, wow, that's really cool. How do I get involved? They want to crack the next code, but there is no next code, or the next thing it's something totally different. And so like it's relatively difficult to get involved with it in a rewarding manner. So like if they came out with a message, even if in that moment only a few people engage with it, it actually has long-lasting impact later on. And this comes from somebody who has stayed up till 4 a.m. way too many times in the last 6 months, looking up some fucking forum post that somebody wrote about Sancha's incursions because somebody used eWar on a goddamn wormhole and it made it jiggle weird, and like everybody had a fucking theory and then never followed up on it. And I've had some late nights, let's just say that.
I will say also that the people who are interested in that code breaking have also been super disappointed that there hasn't been anything of that nature since. So it does go both ways.
Yeah.
The people who weren't interested before have had very little sense, and then the people who were interested in the code breaking, they had a lot of fun, and now they have no more fun.
But
or at
So
least
the-
not as
but
much.
I would say that in just the same way that the PvE has changed, right? Like rats just are fundamentally not the same way as before. So PvE encounters are just fundamentally not the same way as they were before. So when people say I don't like PvE, you got to be like, no, these are different. You got to try it. Like it's not the same word. Like the words don't mean the same thing anymore. In the same sort of way, I think that the lore, especially involving the Triglavians, are almost in a very similar vein, because what we see here is a dramatic adherence to environmental storytelling, where everything that is about the Triglavians that we know about from in-game stuff. The things that we do, like almost every event drops some sort of clue that continues to kind of unravel this whole story, and almost in a Dark Soulsian kind of way, there is actually something to figure out. That's pretty rewarding. And so going back to that 19 years of inertia thing, I often feel like we have this strange expectation that, as you know, that nothing ever happens and none of the answers happen and all that stuff. And on the other hand, I've talked to CCP and I know how many clues that we have just never looked at, how many things that we've just destroyed without caring about, how many things that people have without there are item descriptions that nobody cares. Like the answers are right there, and yet we all echo back and forth to each other. There's no answer. There's no answer. Or we literally tell each other the wrong answer. I've been spending a lot of time going back and like to core canonical resources and discovering that a lot of the things I used to say was just fucking wrong because I was told something wrong, and I've tried to correct it, but like that was just acceptable because there wasn't that much will put in by the player base to tracking it all. And while I'm on a rant, I will dovetail off of that and say that so like Eve is a sandbox, and if Eve is going to be such a true sandbox that we expect CCP to get the hell out of our way so we can build our sandcastles, then that puts a certain responsibility onto us to build decent castles. So when something about Edencom is confusing, or if something about the UI is confusing, or if cat herding is essential, realize that CCP gave us that opportunity. CCP gave us the opportunity of a crappy player who doesn't know what he's doing to demonstrate that they do not know what they're doing in front of us, so that way we can kindly tell them how, because how else would we find these people and help them? How else would the friendship machine work? How else would players teach other players than to have them come into these exact kinds of fleets and then slowly work on them to get them better? So I encourage all of UFCs and everybody else who's engaging with this stuff to always remember that like the frustrations and the learning and the sorting things out and the winnowing of the discourses and the development of public fleets, like that's part of the process. That's the learning thing. That's the thing that we've been saying that we want to do, which is teach new people. Sorry, rant off.
It's almost like you have an opinion about that, Ash.
It's kind of well developed, yeah.
I was gonna plug in right here because a lot of the things is something that I really care about, and I got a fair bit of background knowledge. So I'm just gonna say it right here, right now. Dutch Gunner for CSM16. But to get back on topic, it's a really tricky thing to do because depending on the pacing, there might just not be the time or the room to give everybody the time that they need to pick up on things. Like it's really hard if you have somebody who's willing to learn how to operate in a fleet, but he needs more time than you have available, because if you don't start rolling, if you don't start hitting sites, you're going to lose systems, and losing systems could have future effects that you don't really want. So it's a really hard balance between, on the one hand, having the tools, on the second hand, having the right amount of people, and that goes on both sides, where there is room to learn and get people to improve on certain things, but that takes time, and not everybody is able to pick it up quick enough.
No, and I mean, I've missed out on the opportunity to hit dread sites because the multi-boxes have come in and done them because I spent the time teaching you guys everything they need to learn so that the risks are minimized. I mean, we went off and did mages instead, but it is difficult, the whole herding of cats principle, but I think it is important, and the fact that so many of those newer players have come back shows that it is to an extent worthwhile.
Absolutely. It's just a really tricky thing because on the one hand, Sandbox, you should definitely give people tools and the room to build their own thing, yet at the same time, you really want to avoid that people that are just getting started have no options or no room to really start building.
Sides.
So, here's a question, because it sounds to me like the problem is that the content is too limited and also too demanding, and also too swarmed to be rewarded, and yet requires too much resources to perform long term. So my question would be, like, let's just assume for a second that we don't have to solve the game design pieces of this to like make it work, but let's just assume that there was some sort of system that made it so that the winning team, like if you brought more people to a system and were grinding more sites, that more sites spawned for your side, the same kind of sites. Like, so if all of the tier 0 sites get ran this hour, then next hour 3 sites and spawn instead of 2, such that so that way, because in my opinion, as a fleet scales up, it should be less about how fast we can crush things and more about how many different places we can be at one time. So that
Yes,
as our size becomes bigger, it should be about controlling more sites at the same time.
That's where the roaming
tasty
fleets come in.
I think the
Oh,
roaming
okay.
fleets
My
do
bad.
a good job of that. Yeah.
Right, the roaming fleets, but to a certain extent. But I mean, like, if there were just more, if there were just an overwhelming amount of tier 0s, then you would be inclined to split the group up more thinly.
Not
Right.
really.
So you're trying to go for faction warfare, or more accurately, Aegis Sov, right? That's what you're trying to.
I mean, but there's
aim
still
for.
sites to run. But I mean, like, if we could have, like, 4 10-man teams instead of one 40-man team being a successful strategy, then I think that would actually encourage that learning and development and all that kind of stuff. So these things would have to be easy enough for a relatively novice to lead one of those small squads. But the issue is, there's roaming packs, and then there's the other thing, but there's the sites. But that basically means that there's one group that's crushing sites just nonstop, and then there's one group doing roaming packs. At least that's on the Kybernaut side, it seems.
But
I'll say one thing. That could be a thing, except for something that the Kybernauts have pioneered, which is Ology.
Oh yeah.
So
You're welcome.
I fucking love Ology.
and I love murdering the things that Ology think they're keeping alive. But so it goes.
So fun story. I really started to master this back in the day with a couple dudes because we discovered this was a really good way of fucking with botters. Because this is why merging conduits got nerfed and turned to 10 minutes instead of 1 minute, was because the botters started getting so good at it and started getting so widespread. Like, there's this huge spike in botting, so they had to take care of it immediately. But just prior to that, me and a bunch of dudes would just go run around, and we would grab in Zarmaz, and we would rep up the Zarya at the end, and either leave a rattlesnake there for like 30 minutes at a time, or better yet, kill him.
So the problem is that it's turned into nullsec, right? The only thing you can do against overwhelming Logi that could rep any amount of DPS is alpha, and for that, to some degree, you need numbers, at least to punch through the Leshaks, especially the Raznaborg Leshaks. So thanks to Ology, I don't know how you would split up effectively. You would need very well-trained groups who can do it, because I can punch through reps on a Raznaborg Leshak with a relatively small number of people because I have an alliance and some friends who are well-trained and can use T2 RD and know how to fire on command and all those sorts
Yeah.
of things, where that's much harder to do in a public fleet.
Mhm.
We've seen that happen where I will bring that fleet in, and then certain members of the Trig Ology go, ah, shit, not again.
I mean, I argue that. So this is why I don't know if they've changed minor conduits. I assume that they did, but I haven't talked to anybody exactly how it works. But like the way that field bases or forward posts work is that, which is the tier 0, is that the first 2 waves are relatively small. You have to kill them all. But with the final wave, it is multiple subsequent waves that happen rapidly. And you don't have to kill them all. Once you've killed a certain amount of rats, a certain amount of points, the site is over and all the rest remains. And so what I found is that like if some rat gets off and is no longer like easily applicable, I don't even bother. I just wait for the next wave and then start popping some of the ones that come out there. So like I've even had people come in Ology while I'm solo, and I will do everything. I'll drag rats around and I will, swap my DPS, all the things that you do to break through Logi to varying success. And one of 2 things will happen. Either A, I am somewhat successful, or at least B, I've had it where there was, a team of like 8 multi-boxing nesters that were just going into all the sites and doing Ology. Well, my one Myrmidon took out those 8 nesters so that the rest of the team could just go and run sites, because they could either stop the rest of the team or they could stop me, and they could actually kind of stop me. So then I got a couple other people in that could blap through it, and then we were good to go, because again, you like nesters are slow, so I can try to maneuver the rat to come to go away by warping around or whatever to kill things, or I can just bring in like bumping ships, because I know that Nestor's weakness is their cap chain range. So I might be able to. I see that they're cap trained, so maybe I can break them there. Like that's the thing that I was talking about. Is like I really like the play and counterplay that comes from all of this, and I think it's a little bit more complex than people have really bitten onto yet. But I also haven't gotten to play around with it in practice myself yet that much.
I mean, I just like encouraging Edencom Logi to go and repair the sites, because the payouts are not fixed, and with the very, very low amount of loyalty that you get for Edencom, I really don't want to encourage Logi to go along to the 0s and the 1s and run Logi against you guys.
Yeah.
The one thing that I think is really important is to avoid this content turning into an N+1 slugfest for both sides, because that's going to kill the content, or very much the enjoyability of running the content. And the same goes with more and more voices about starting with suicide ganking, because the people that you want to get on board because they think, hey, this sounds interesting, or the people that are starting to play Eve and want to get involved in this, like they need a lot of explaining. And if the Ology effectively neuters the fleet for those people, you're killing off interest, and you're just killing off the incentive to keep building on this content with the amazing template that it has. So it really means that we as the players also have a really big responsibility in handling it in such a way that people that are interested and might not have all the experience or the skill points yet to be on the top performance level still have a way to get in and enjoy the content without feeling a fifth wheel on the wagon.
I will say, Ash, on the terms of Ology, I have considered recording a voice macro that's just that I can click a mouse button and have it repeat for me. If the target you are shooting is getting reps, switch to another target so that I don't have to say that every 3 seconds. Because
So
my
here's a
voice
fun
is going
fact.
from doing it.
The the Edencom Rats reps are really fucking strong. So I've had to play these like counter Logi games when there's no O-Logi on field, because they already bring some pretty decent Logi. So I mean, I just find this as a good skill.
Ish.
Oh no, they absolutely do.
But it's definitely noticeable that, well, here's the nice thing. If the Trig rep shield
Tricks don't
it's a
rep
trig
shield.
player repping it.
Yes, that's true. Yes.
Let me clear up any confusion. If you see shield reps, stop shooting it. Do you know how many people stop shooting it? About 2.
Yes, I was about to say, if you're lucky, it's 2 out or 3 out of the 10.
So I would say, like, for one thing, when you split your fleet, you split the Ology fleet. And then for the other thing, there are things you can say as an FC that get even new bros really excited about everybody shooting at the same time. It's a lot of fun.
Yeah, I like to look
yeah,
at these
we've
things
had-
as not as problems, but more puzzles to solve.
We've had good solution. We've had good times with it. Like once we get the fleet into it, and especially if I've got a good core of Munins where I can punch through stuff, and I'm like, okay, hold your fire, blah blah blah. Look, it exploded, hooray! And then we can show people, hey, if you follow what the FC says, you get a reward of moving on, hooray!
Right.
Yeah.
Being able to demonstrate that yes, this does work, I'm not just saying it for my own benefit, is really helpful. But there's just so many people who fall into it from the default UI thing that Ash brought up earlier of, well, they're here to defend their home and everything tells them to defend it, so they're in this fleet, but they don't really know what's going on and not sure they really care. That there's a lot of problems with that. So I feel like splitting the fleet up on the Edencom side is going to be a really hard sell because of the Ology problem.
Yeah, and I totally agree with you there. I just wanted to say that for like people listening. I had a feeling we're on the same page.
So I want to stress that, like, so my I don't necessarily disagree with the points that you made. I would what I was trying to suggest is that having multiple sites like that means that it's actually harder for the Ology to stop you too. Because instead of switching sites, or instead of switching rats, you're literally switching sites. You leave enough pressure on the field that makes it so that if the Ology doesn't stay, then you take that site and you move on to the next site. If there's plenty of other sites to run, even if the Ology is stopping you in particular sites, then they aren't stopping you as much.
Maybe,
but I mean,
right now I can guarantee that I can punch through one site and consistently do it.
Right. And so the only other thing I'd say about that is, like, from a game design perspective, your problem and your good thing is all connected, right? Like, if there wasn't this problem where crap, they're going to just rep things, then that moment of good job, you finally figured out when to shoot. Like, you would never get to that point. That lesson wouldn't be necessary. It would.
Oh yeah.
Like in my sites, when I've been running these things with majors, I literally don't broadcast. My job when doing minor conduits was to warp between sites. Like, that was my FCing, because any amount of like broadcasting or anything like that was worthless, because everybody has different, their proper ranges, and we're designed to fight rooms that are like 4 times this difficulty. So
you clearly haven't fought 25 Logi.
What?
Yeah.
No, that's what I'm saying. Like, but what I'm saying is,
It's not that easy when you've got like 25 Triglavian Pro Logi repairing a minor. It's
absolutely no.
it's
I'm talking about chapter 1. Like when I was running a major conduit fleet for hours. Whenever we ended up having to do minors, I didn't even broadcast anything, because why would you? These things are a whole new fucking beast. Don't get me wrong. Like, across the board, these aren't even the same difficulty. It is another like, one of the things that I found the most interesting was RFC was like, all right, we're gonna go into one of the hard ones, the staging area. And I'm thinking, and the staging area is the minor conduit. Like, these are the things that people tried to solo all fucking day, or always was asking me how to solo them during chapter 1 and 2. So, like, it astonished me that would be described as the hard site. And then I tried to FC one yesterday, and I was like, wow, this is a hard site.
I don't know. I feel like a lot of the hardness of the sites comes from the situation we're in of,
I mean, compared to minors,
the vast
before.
majority of things being zerged, and you've got people in low skill ships, and you're trying to do it. Because honestly, having done the sites in what you would have been doing them in chapters 1 and 2, they're not that much more difficult. They're about
You're actually correct. No, you're absolutely correct.
50% more difficult.
Yep.
It really comes down to the fact that you're trying to run them in shield tank ruptures or whatever, right?
Yep.
And then, yeah, it turns out that the new miner is a lot harder to take a shield tank rupture through. But it's not really that much harder to take a Leshak through.
Yes, but I also think that that's really great because the nature of this conflict and the nature of the actual fact that it is a conflict has made it so that people have this impulse to use this cheap disposable doctrine instead of like, no one's asking me what, well, I mean, they probably should, but like resist profile, like whatever. There are some builds there, I've been rolling out more fancier builds, but for the most part, like people are content with processing this as a fleet fight with fleet people instead of buying expensive individual ships to conquer it. And I've been playing EVE enough to know that that is just mind-blowing to me. Like CCP has been trying to get players to work together to do something, and the players have decided to overpower it with bling. For the history of EVE, like this is truly a bizarre phenomena of EVE player behavior. And honestly, one of the things that I think is the reason why CCP has done some of the missteps that they have in the rollout of this invasion is because I don't think that they even anticipated how much that we would like totally fucking all into it, because historically this is not the way the player base reacts to this kind of content. I'll just put it that way.
I think it comes partially down, and I'm just going to make the comparison between incursions, the Sunshine incursions, and the Triglavian invasions. Is with the Sunshine incursions, it was a winner takes all, and if you're going to compete, and you make sure that you're the one that ends up as the winner, you're going to have all the rewards in a much shorter amount of time, and in order to accomplish that, you're starting to look at squeezing every little bit of performance you can, and that means that you start looking at more expensive ships, more expensive modules, more expensive implants to pull it off. And with the Triglavian invasion, it was not about the winner takes all. It's like, yeah, you can compete, but everybody's going to take a bigger hit in the reward that they're getting. So it's not that there isn't such a strong incentive to have to be the best performer in order to take it all. And there's also a big difference between Chapter 1 with the World Arc Proving Ground and Chapter 2 with the Observatory Flashpoint, is that with the Observatory Flashpoint, the reward for pulling it off was the parts or the possible blueprints or the skill books for the Triglavian Dreadnought, where with Chapter 1, the World Arc Proving Ground, it really was a massive challenge. It was a lot more difficult than the Flashpoints, and you were not guaranteed to get anything super fancy. Like, yeah, you could get Zoria or Velis modules, but those drops were really rare. And you just didn't see the same, I'm just going to call it Zerg response that you had with the Flashpoints, where people just deliberately went for the bling to be the biggest sledgehammer, to kill the Dreadnought, to kill the structure, and then move on again.
I would like to say I'm really sad that I missed the World Arc the first time around because I was otherwise engaged, and I want it to come back.
Oh, you, me, and a lot of other people love to get that challenge back. But then again, there also was a big difference in the interest in the World Arc Proving Ground, where after the novelty wore off, a lot of people were not that interested in the World Arc Proving Ground, where the interest in the Observatory Flashpoints was a lot stronger during the entire chapter.
But I really would like to see that come back, especially the mechanics they introduced for it.
Oh yeah,
I think we can all agree that makes things more interesting, and particularly when we're talking about these Zerg fleets, having to do the World Arc with a Zerg fleet sounds spicy.
I can say Flashpoints with the Zerg fleet have been great. If by Zerg fleet you mean cheap stuff with a lot of people.
Yeah, cheap stuff with a lot of people.
Okay,
but
right on.
From what I understand, the majors, I have not done a public fleet major yet. I actually don't think I've run a major yet. But the majors and Zerg fleets are also pretty spicy right now because they're actually harder than the flashpoints.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I still haven't
So-
attempted one, but I'm really excited for the idea. And our Zerg fleet type of doctrine is a ton of fun. I think it'll fairly.
I really want to experience a major conduit.
Yeah, I think that this is something that we have talked about a lot, Dutch Gunner and I, which is that the issue is that the tier 2 sites only spawn during the second half of the second stage. So either the system is low sec, or it's going to be fortified in about 3 hours. So
3 hours. Wow, you were in a slow one.
I'm just, whatever. I was trying to be optimistic. So,
Yeah, I know. Me
so in
too.
that amount of time, like you get to see that the system's in readout, and you move everybody over, and then you wait for it to go thing, and then you can do the thing, and you can do it. So there is this universe in which there could be a major conduit or a tier 2 style fleet that can execute on the things that only happen during Bulwark. Like, it is theoretically possible because you do get enough warning by the readout phase. But, like, compare that to what we had before, which was, we see the stellar reconnaissance, we know we have about 24 hours to move in, and then we have 2 to 3 good days of just as much fucking major conduits as we want. And that is two totally different things. And CCP has kind of suggested, or at least I've heard from people that CCP has said that they're okay with this. They're okay with the idea that some content is just like that gameplay is not 100% available anymore. But I just feel like a lot of these problems, like there are pieces that are just barely off. So like if major conduits were available like earlier and therefore longer during the focus, I keep going back to that idea of like it's a grind, but there's also not enough of it, right? Like what does that mean? What does that mean when it comes to how the content is being distributed?
Yeah, I know that CCP Sledgehammer has mentioned a couple of times about how they're going to look into it. I know I brought it up with CCP Coyote. I think that's the right name.
Yeah, CCP Coyote is he's one of the main dudes. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm sorry, CCP friend. I hope I got your name right.
He's a handsome fella too, by the way, just unrelated.
Sorry, what was that?
I said CCP Coyote is a handsome fella.
Oh, okay.
It's a joke. Sorry.
But it's this weird dichotomy of it is a grind, and then there's not enough of it. The boring parts last too long. The interesting parts are there in a flash and gone. And I really feel like that's the biggest problem we have right now with this content in general. Like, fix that problem, and then worry about the NPC balance. Then worry about Ology if you want to worry about it. Worry about the actual awards for fortressing or liminality. Like, fix the problem so that people who want to engage with the content on a high level and have the capacity to do that are able to. Because those are the sorts of people who will then be the core members of the big Zerg public fleets. And then you also get the experience of, okay, majors are up. Everybody who's major qualified or whatever, switch to your major ships. We're going to go run those. And then you get the, oh man, how much ISK do you make in majors? Oh, we make 100 million ISK an hour. Oh, I want to do that. I want to be part of that. Well, fly with us in the minors and start training your way into the majors, and then you can join us in the majors, and then you can be a big boy with your big boy pants and make real money, right? Like, that progression doesn't exist right now. That incentive isn't there.
Right.
All.
I meant to mention this earlier, and I'm really glad that you pointed that out. So, like, because flashpoints can be zerged, and everything else is zerged, and it's just an accumulation of points, and it's competitive as opposed to like an actual like challenge. What that means is all comes together that majors or tier 2 sites are completely ignorable. Nobody runs them.
Yeah.
Nobody runs them.
Why would you when you can go run a roaming fleet?
Yep. It's not only difficult to go through all that process, but like it's not productive. And so like there feels like there should be a stage where like, oh my god, we got a Zerg, we got to claw it back, but then there also should be like a more slow plotting stage. And maybe if the stage 2 is going to be less competed over by players, then maybe it should really like lean into the fact that stage 2 is a direct challenge, as you know, as the forces that you're going up against, the NPC forces that you're going up against, put up their final stand for the system. Whereas stage 1 is more about just the raw grind.
I don't know if that's entirely fair. I mean, I'm running the stage 2 sites with a kitchen fleet sync, so we're running mages with a not organized fleet at all with alpha logi. So I don't know. I think it just comes down to what people's perceptions are of what the sites require and what they actually are maybe not being quite in a line.
Well, yeah, I do think the site's difficulty is slightly overblown by a lot of people. A lot of people, oh no, they added battleships and emerging. It's now impossible. It's not really that much more difficult in practical terms. But I do feel like give me a world arc that is basically impossible to Zerg and gives me 100 million ISK whenever I run it, so that I can have something to point people to and say, hey, pay attention in fleet, learn how broadcasts work, so that we can go do this site.
Yes, we need a carrot for excellence. We need a, like, I guess, so the thing is that...
Get out of your stupid bloody Praxis that's got blasters and sentry drones.
Right.
And get into a real ship so that we can go run a real site.
There's nothing wrong with Praxis. I take Praxis in to do dreads.
Oh Jesus! All right, so my we've had the same conversation for so many times in Malro comms. Either way, so but to reinforce the point that I was trying to make though is that I'm not saying oh shit! Now I lost my fucking. I just got spun around.
All right. Well, I'm very sorry. I'm gonna have to. I have to bow out. I'm very late for something else. It's been wonderful talking to you people. And Ash, we'll catch up some other time, and I'll tell you about how the Minmatar are better than whatever stupid faction you were with.
I need that to happen. Yeah, message me, please. Get on it. Get on. You can bug me as often as you want to.
It's been wonderful talking with you all. Eden Com forever. Blah blah blah. But you know what? Amarian systems. Triggs. Just look there. I won't be there to shoot you with Artie, so think about that. Think about that when you pick a system.
Sounds like heresy.
Zoria loves you.
I feel like he and I are more similar than he thinks.
I think we're on the same
Guys,
team.
I'm gonna tag out as well because by now it's 4 a.m.
Yeah. I appreciate.
I do care about the subject. I do want to help and do my part, but I do need my sleep, especially considering that we're still in the middle of the week and not in the weekend.
Right. Yeah. The point that I was trying to reinforce is that there needs to be a way to highlight excellence. There needs to be right now. It isn't whether or not majors are hard or easy. It's the fact that they're irrelevant, and so there's no reason to step up into the more sophisticated concepts unless you just do it for funsies, or whatever. So
or for saving HiSec, which is what we're doing.
Right, but what I'm saying is that I've seen many people that just don't run the tier 1 sites at all, or tier 2 sites at all, and just push it.
But yeah.
All right.
So,
well,
interestingly, based on what CCP, I think it was Sledgehammer said that the level zeros give as much rep as all of the others. Like it doesn't matter which one you push, just the amount that are pushed. It's actually potentially changed the way I run systems anyway, which is before I was doing the bigger ones because logically bigger ones mean more push.
Right. Interesting. So the harder ones aren't necessarily better for pushing. They're like bonuses if you get the lower ones down.
Yep.
Interesting. And actually, one of the things I found myself doing last time, because the rats don't warp off in the tier 1 sites, what I caught myself doing was popping all of the anchoring rats, or all of the, scramming rats, and then we would just warp off and go do the next field base, or field forward post. And then when we were back out of sights, instead of chasing down roaming packs, I would just warp us back to the sealed, the inactive beacon, and the rats would all still be there, and we just keep killing them until the next popped up, and then we would just warp to that one and keep going.
I'm curious if that actually does anything. Because I've heard both sides. I've heard you
it
say
kept us
a whole bunch
busy.
of times that rats. Yeah, I mean that's worth something.
It's fair.
I've heard you say that rats give points, and I've heard other people say that groups only give points.
I'm willing
Or
to be
only
corrected
groups.
on this one. I'm not saying that from like law. I'm saying it from my understanding based on the
Yeah.
thing, and also it could have happened. So I have not heard voice from God answer for that. So if somebody has,
Yeah, and
I'm
I
not
had
sure.
the voice from God. I'm curious.
everybody pauses and looks at chat for the voice of God. Yeah, so I hope everybody enjoyed this discussion. I just want to appreciate everybody for coming and spending far longer than I'm sure you planned to talk about a feature that we all love far more than we planned to. And I also appreciate the fact that like everybody thought it was super crazy to sit everybody down and talk about this from both sides. And this has been an awesome and interesting and colorful and I think very valuable discussion. CSP Sledgehammer has been in the chat the whole time. He just said, thank you for it. So I hope to be able to do this more. I'm going to keep the chat together so that way we can keep communicating and stuff. And it's like on the one hand, we're on opposite sides because we want different results from this feature. But on the other hand, just like Eve, we're all on the same side because we all collectively want this feature to be awesome. So I appreciate you guys engaging with me on this one.
Anytime.
Yeah, from everything I've seen, the people playing for EdenCom, not EdenCom specifically, the in-game organization, but the EdenCom Defense Initiative are great, and I love our opponents.
All right. Well,
yeah, like same straight back at you guys. It's been fun fighting you.
And just to wrap things up, I want to stress that we have Kybernaut.space, which is our headquarter for all things involving the invasions. We have Kybernaut's Guide that is, it is tailored towards information that is useful to people on one side versus the other. But I'm sure that, if you guys read through it, there'd be something valuable for you too. But for everybody, we have all of the invasions. This is maintained by hand by our staff at the moment. CSP Sledgehammer, give me an API. That is available to everyone. So it shows, including all of the minor victories and everything else like that. There's a button now at the top that allows you to filter to look for only sites that you are looking for, and it gives you all the information that you'll need, including like the rat type and all that stuff. And if you click on more details, there's things like the Z kill board. We're going to be rolling out more, but that's what we got now. If you guys from EdenCom, if you want to give us, if there's something that would be useful to you or anything that you want to do, like it is themed Kybernaut-y, but that's kind of just like for the sake of it. It really is supposed to be a place for everyone to achieve their, invasion content desires and knowledge. So, hopefully we'll be able to create an exchange of information to get as many people as possible, anybody who wants to engage in this content that finds it interesting, to be able to do so effectively.
I think Kyber-naughty is definitely the right phrase for that.
Oof. Well. All right, then.
I love it.
I mean,
Thank you for that, Jim.
Masks. Yeah. All right. On that note, thank you all for coming. I'm going to find somebody to raid. And also, thanks for all the people in chat that have hung out. There's been some pretty good discussion. I've tried to keep an eye on it. I'm just super happy that, like, hearing people talk about these features, even when they're complaining about it, makes me so happy. Because they're like, we need more lore. Like, I feel like I've woken up from, like, in the last 6 months, and it's a totally different Eve, and it's a totally different Eve community. And so, like less than a month ago, I was the crazy man in the woods talking about the stars. And now, like, people's attitude about everything has changed. And I love a lot of the things that have been happening for the last month. Shoot. Major, are you going live tonight? Do you want to plug your shtick before we go?
Yeah, I will be going live as soon as there is a high-sec system. So if you see a high-sec system that looks like it needs some triangles pushing out of it, you can expect me to be live.
All right. And I guess since we've still got Emma here, go ahead and plug away for your shtick too.
Einstein Rosen Brigade is a C4 Wormhole Alliance. We like to help people who are new to the game or new to wormholes or just want to come live in wormholes and learn how to do so. We're a friendly group of people in-game. ERB Recruitment is our channel. Come chat with us. We're nice people.
And of course, if you're interested in learning EVE Online or just engaging in it in a deeper way, if you're tired of your nullsec empire or mining boss telling you that there is nothing fun to EVE, come join the Convocation of Empyreans, where we maximize player engagement with EVE Online. We are advancing Empyrean affairs throughout New Eden and want to help you learn and engage with the content that you want to engage with without having to deal with all the bullshit otherwise, because there's plenty of other people to do that. We're a partner of ERB, and we're a partner of a bunch of other groups, and we would love to have you. And of course, if you are interested in chewing on some suns, the Kybernauts Corporation is open to anyone who is willing to make triangles, a little bit cooler in the world and get rid of all these squares. You can just send an invite to kybernauts.com, or sorry, Kybernauts Corp, and then go to kybernauts.space, go to the guide, check it out, and get involved. And the Discord.
I've linked both Discords in Twitch chat a couple of times. I'm going to keep spamming it.
I appreciate that. Now I'm going to raid Defiant Daniel, I think. Let me see real quick.
Nice.
He's a good dude. Yeah, all right. Well, I have been Ashtarothi. This has been a great time. I appreciate you all coming, participating, and checking out in the the Carnage Rose. That is the Discord link for the Triglavian community. Thank you to all the people in chat and who have come and participated. It has been awesome, and we will have to do it again soon and regularly. So until then, I've been Ashtarothi, and I'll see you in space.
Bring on the wrecking machine. For every city